Good evening. I call the August 24th, 2023 work session to order. I want to welcome everybody that's here tonight. We have a good crowd already, and I imagine there's going to be even more based on the fact we have 6 public hearings tonight. I can't let Leslie forget the fact that we have 6 public hearings tonight.
Not Leslie's, not mine, not Leslie's fault.
Yeah,
Okay.
we only had one meeting this month too. That's why we got
That's
6
what,
public
that's
meetings.
why we're paying the price.
That's right.
Well, I thought we were dressing up.
Let's do it.
Okay, first item on the agenda is a consideration of work session and regular meeting agendas. I will open for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the work session and regular meeting agendas as presented.
Thank you. A motion is on the floor. Is there a second?
A second. Terry
Thank you,
Holmes.
Counselor Holmes. Mr. Kessinger, please call the roll.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. And that brings us to the first item of business, which is a discussion of application for exemption from real property taxes by Valley Area Community Service Support, DBA Valley Supportive Housing per State Code 58.1-3651. Ms. Beauregard.
Thank you, Mary Claffey. I'm going to kick us off this evening, and we also have Mr. Charlie Haney on Zoom, who is here to address this as well and answer questions. We also have Mr. Lou Siegel here and Valley Supportive Housing. So I'm going to kick us off though with a little bit of history of how we got here, and then I know you'd like to hear from Mr. Siegel as well. So let me just start by, I know this is a very unusual and difficult situation. This is not a usual request for tax exemption, and I'll explain that in a minute. And so there's no decision being made tonight. It's just a discussion and a chance for City Council to ask questions and understand the situation a little bit better. And before I turn it over to Mr. Siegel, let me provide some background. So in April of this year, Mr. Lou Siegel, who's the Executive Director of Valley Supportive Housing, sent a letter to the City Attorney's Office requesting an exemption for 6 properties purchased this year by Valley St. Clair Properties LLC, which is owned by VSH. He also requested at that time an exemption be granted for a portion of 111 Pump Street that had been occupied by a commercial business and treated as taxable. They're remodeling that bottom portion of Pump Street in order to provide additional below market rate housing units. However, going back even further than that, in 2006, Valley Area Community Support Inc., or VSH, which is a 501c3, was granted real property tax exempt status by the Staunton City Assessor's Office. But as we soon discovered, this was done without proper authorization from Virginia State Code or local ordinance by City Council, which would have been required. And upon further investigation, city staff has not been able to find any justification in state code or local ordinance to allow for the exemption that has been granted to Valley Supportive Housing. So since 2006, they have been operating under the assumption that their properties are indeed tax exempt. And unfortunately, this was an erroneous decision made by city staff at that time, and it does need to be corrected in some way. So since 2006, there have been 6 properties treated as exempt for real property taxes. And now the new properties in question, the ones on St. Clair and the bottom portion of Pump Street, have been treated as taxable to this point pending further action. So as far as the process, we're here this evening just to discuss this item and allow questions and discussion. But since January 1, 2003, as a result of amendment to the state code, the decision whether to grant exemptions from real property taxes has been vested in City Council rather than the General Assembly, which previously considered such exemptions. And under this applicable state code provision, a public hearing on each application for tax exemption by designation is required. And the earliest a public hearing could be scheduled on this matter is September 14th, 2023. And at which time City Council would also consider whether to approve or deny the request. And I'll also note that the last time such a request was considered was 2013, and City Council did not grant that request for tax exempt status for that particular organization. So those are my opening remarks. I know Mr. Haney is on Zoom, so we are happy to answer any questions. And then I know you'd like to hear from Mr. Siegel as well, from Valley Supportive Housing.
Mr. Haney, do you have any comments? Hold on a second. Are you on mute?
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
now we can hear you.
I don't have any further comments at this point. Leslie's covered a lot of it.
Questions from council?
I was just wondering if there was a way that for the past taxes, we could either not charge them that or somehow the city and we could come up with the money to cover that, since in a way, it's kind of our fault that we let them get by without paying those taxes, you know, and then as far as the taxes that they would be due on the property now, for them to pay that. And then maybe when we come around to, when we put money in for grants and stuff like that, maybe we could do more there to help out. But I think it's really would be a hardship on them to have them pay all that money when, you know, every person they get off the street is good for the whole city. And especially good for those people.
Terry,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I want, the organization is commendable. I want to help the organization where we can. But if I recall correctly, you know, whatever I've learned about it, I don't think it's under Virginia code or wherever that we can automatically or just basically forgive those taxes. I don't think that's allowed in state code. Now, can we come up with maybe some money like we do other organizations, or at least part of it or whatever? I don't know if we could say just pay it all. I don't know. That's something that we'll have to discuss,
Correct. That's
but
what,
you know,
that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Discuss and come up with a
Yeah.
potential solution. We haven't heard about this before the past 30 days, and it's weighing heavily on all of our.
yeah.
So we're here to address the situation, and I'd like to hear from Valley Supportive Housing and tell us a little bit about how this came to be.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
but before that, just to go through the legal question that arose. Counselor Robertson is correct. The council cannot simply waive taxes for any back taxes for anyone. However, this is a nonprofit organization, and there is a code provision about donations to nonprofit organizations that help residents within the city. And so, again, I know y'all are having a conversation, but an option would be to find the past due tax bill amount. And if you have funds available, appropriate that amount as a donation to Valley Supportive Housing to cover the back tax. So
So
Thank you. That's a,
how much of the back taxes are we talking about?
well, I don't know.
Talking, you're going back how
So
many years?
by, Mr. Haney is legally required to go back 3 years. And it's around, Charlie, what is that amount? Was it $50,000 for the current properties?
Yeah, I believe that was the number we had calculated. Maybe a little bit more than 50
A
grand.
little bit more.
Now, Mr. Mayor, you had mentioned about this being a charitable organization that works directly with the disadvantaged in our city. And I absolutely concur with that. In my time working in housing, in the supportive housing sector there too. Valley Supportive Housing is one of the organizations that works on the edge of insolvency, one of the true nonprofits that is putting people in housing that would otherwise be in shelters, be in parks, and that, and they do not have a heavy payroll. They, they're working just right at the edge of what they can do. So this is this is a group that directly helps citizens. I would be fully supportive of doing whatever we can legally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of whether or not anybody here doesn't want to find a solution to this problem that helps Valley Supportive Housing. We all see the benefit of it to the people who take advantage of the services, but also to the community at large. It's simply finding a way to legally pay for those back taxes and then look forward how we can find those monies moving forward. I think we're all in agreement. I don't know, but I think I speak for everybody that we're.
And and in the meeting that I had with Charlie and Leslie, and don't take this the wrong way, but if we were to come up with this, say, oh, we're just going to pay it all or forgive it, whatever. It's just like we do in pharmacy. You sell somebody a bottle of Robitussin or this old Tussin with codeine, and within 20 to 30 minutes, you've got a line probably 10 to 12 foot long, them going to get it. If we were to forgive, I guarantee you in a few months, we're going to have requests to forgive or to take care of, taxes or whatever from a long list of people.
I would argue that there aren't a whole lot of organizations doing what they do at the level that they do. And we would approach each one of those separately.
Right. I understand.
Yeah,
I'm simply saying that
Yeah.
you'll have a list of people wanting taxes forgiven or whatever.
And I think as Mr. Haney would tell us, there already is a list of people always wanting that. So,
Yeah.
Understood. That's a
Yeah, I
good
put
point,
my
Mark.
name in there. I said I'd like my taxes.
Well, I think,
I think we all have agreed upon is to go back to 3 years and helping to give funding to cover those taxes. And we give and in return we get back. And then going forward, we just find a solution to do that continuing basis of providing the grant for them to pay the taxes on a yearly basis. And that would come to what we decide.
we don't have a grant to do so. We're going to have to come up with a way of funding this in the future. But we have to know how many places we got. And I have a question for Mr. Siegel on that.
Yeah, maybe
We have
should he?
13 pieces of property involved here.
When I go to the day.
Yes, please speak from the dais because otherwise the people online can't hear your response. But
What, 13, what?
13 pieces of property involved, I believe.
I think it's 12.
It's 12.
All right.
And it's,
Could you give me the dates that these properties were acquired by Valley Supportive Housing?
okay, I can do this by memory.
Okay.
And I put together a little presentation here just to start off with.
That's fine.
But the first one was approximately 2006.
And which one was that?
It's a property number 1314 West Johnson Street, top of the hill there.
Mhm. Was that the FEN Johnson?
Yes,
And that is the piece of property that has the most value. Is that appraised at over $1 million?
it probably is, yeah.
Okay. Right. Then when did the 1115 West Johnson and 1111 West Johnson come on board?
Well, if you give me a second to open my computer, I can look, but I'll take a guess if you'd like.
That's fine.
Okay, so approximately, say it's 2006, probably 2011. And then the next one after that was, I think Calorama or
The Madison, North Madison.
no, that's 2021.
2021.
2020. North Madison.
Okay.
And Pump Street was 2022, 21. 11, 11 West Johnson. It was a couple years after 1115. It wasn't until 2020 when we bought Pump Street that we became aware of a tax situation, and we requested that. And that property consisted of 6 apartments, existing apartments, and a commercial section. So we requested to the city that we not be taxed for the 6 apartments, but we would be taxed for the commercial section. And the commercial section was Staunton Glass, a fellow named Dale Gibson, and he was getting ready to retire. So when he retired 2 years later is when we started to tear out the commercial area and put in 6 additional apartments there, and they'll be finished next month, essentially.
That's in the bottom section or
Of Pump Street.
The lower section, yeah.
And then the St. Clair properties.
January 1st of this year.
And Mr. Siegel, we understand that there are renters in those properties, so you're collecting rent. Can you tell us a bit about those residents and?
Well,
and-
I don't know whether you're going to allow me to pull up these things or not, but we have a total of 62 apartments now, another 6 in September. That'll be 68. We are always 100% filled. We only lease apartments to individuals with a diagnosis of a mental health issue, or a recognized mental health issue. So as a consequence, let me just, this is a bit of a speech right here. This is what we do. We provide a combination of housing and community support services to, let's just settle on 68 people. And as I say, we're always 100% full of 68 people. These folks have complex and difficult mental health issues, and they struggle with their incomes. So we're talking about 68 folks here, and at our client services meeting last week, where we take a look at those waiting for housing. I put the synopsis together on a spreadsheet, and at that time there were 40 people looking for housing, 40 more. So they're here someplace in Staunton, and they're costing Staunton money. Now, if you can just allow me, let me see here, I'm working with. So we look at this as some sort of a collective responsibility. Valley Supportive Housing's got 68 tenants. It's in the city of Staunton. Stanton's got some responsibility to these 68. If they're not with us, where would they be? So we've got 68. The Valley Mission's got room for 138 singles and another 20 or 30 so families. And then we've got this list, some of which might be on Valley Mission, but there's another 40 right here. So when this company was set up, it was set up the mission statement said that we're going to set the rents at a point that the income of these individuals is reasonable. So most of these guys, and you've got this in some of your literature there, most of our tenants have an income, just to set a number. Some of them are a little higher, some are a little lower. Their typical income is $829 a month. So as you probably know, in Staunton, a typical 1-bedroom apartment is in the $800 range plus utilities. Our rents, here we go. We charge $500, including utilities. Now, it doesn't work from a financial standpoint. Okay. If we charge $800, if we charge $925, we'd be paying real estate taxes, but we're not. We're dealing with a group of people, all of whom have these, what's classified as very low incomes. Okay, and you look at the Staunton median income, it's somewhere, depending on whose study you look at, it's around $43,000, $44,000. Very low is 25% of that. So 800 times 12 is $1,000. And that's really low so far as Staunton's median income. So here's a debatable number here. What's it cost a city or region for a homeless individual without an apartment? And the number, believe it or not, is between 24,000 and 35,000, depending on whose study you look at. And I brought, these are 3 studies, which I'll leave with you, that indicate that that's a good number. And once you put somebody in an apartment, that number drops to around $4,000 of what it might cost. Now, you might say, where the heck does that number come from? Well, if one of us was to go to the emergency room with something not critically wrong with us, it's probably going to cost around $3,500 to $4,000. You'll see that in here. If you send a homeless person to the emergency room, it's probably going to cost about $7,500, according to these studies, primarily because of underlying illnesses, underlying situations. From a Valley supportive housing standpoint, another way to look at what goes on with that $24,000 to $35,000 is, for instance, we have a tenant who in our 1314 West Johnson property decided to take apart the heat detector in our fire suppression system, which brought the Staunton Fire Department to the place and me. And once we've figured out what was wrong, we had to replace that heat detector because they destroyed it. And that cost us $1,000. The fire department cost Staunton probably $3,500. They send 5 trucks and 13 people each time. And it's, I initially was skeptical about that $24,000 to $35,000 number, but it's not hard to get there. So if we just assumed that next line down, that there was $4,000 saved per tenant, 4,000 times 68 is, what's that say? Around $272,000. And so one of you might say, that's a baloney number. That's just a no good number. So pick $1,000, which I find extremely believable. And you got $68,000, and the real estate taxes that we're talking about here are $33,500. So I think the juxtaposition here is legitimate to look at. Now, you might hate spreadsheets, but here's one to start with. That top area above that first yellow line is our sources of income. And typically when we budget, our rents cover only about 75% of our expenses. And I'll show you the expenses in a minute. Grants from our friends like Capsaw. We've got an individual from Capsaw here tonight, and United Way and the Community Foundation and a donations. They cover about the other 25%. So what I put here was our budget for the year, just ending. We were on a fiscal year, and here's what it actually ended up being over here. Now I'm going to slip down to expenses at this point. Here's operations. It pays for me, pays for legal services, It pays for the, so just typical stuff, telephone, internet, and utilities. There's nothing extraordinary here. If you look at those lines, nothing extraordinary. We'll slip down next to maintenance. There's another, the next big number. And it's basically what you would expect. We probably own as many or more 100-year-old houses in Stanton than anybody else. And they're not growing, so to speak. There's always something that's going on. So that's what it is. We pride ourselves in having safe, complete places for these folks to live. They're not living without kitchens. They have their own bathrooms. They have commercial, so to speak, commercial leases. We run with fair housing. We're very responsive to fair housing requirements. So that's mostly maintenance right there. You see that truck? Anybody needs a bad truck? We've got one for you. Okay, next line down, next section down is what it costs us from a financial standpoint. We haven't been given a bunch of houses to rent. All of these have local loans from First Bank or from Virginia Housing or from the Department of Housing and Community Development. So if you look down here, you see a fairly large number for a loss, but that was primarily because of these just repairs. And we have a little kitty, so to speak, that helps us take care of unexpected expenses is what it amounts to. Maintenance expense. So what you got here is cost of money. You've got maintenance costs and operations costs. And there's nothing extraordinary about these numbers here. Let's see, I think that was my last slide. So, like I say, if you try to add $34,000 of property taxes here, I mean, what we do with, we more or less work hand in hand with Stanton. We've got, this is the way the business model was set up. The board made a distinct decision to match rents with incomes. And if you got an $829 income per month, and you saw us come in with an $800 rental fee and $125 in utilities, you haven't got a chance. We've got a few Section 8 folks. We've got some PSH vouchers, but mostly what we've got is folks that have an $829 income, paying around $500. When we first opened up the Calorama Street house, the rents were in the $325 a month range. There's still one tenant there paying $325.
We understand what you're saying, and
Okay.
we've gotten the brochure and we appreciate it very much. And we understand we have an issue in Stanton, and we are
Okay.
not questioning
Okay.
the fact that you're taking care of needy people. My question is, you acquired 6 pieces of property since in 2023
Yes.
on St. Clair Street, basically an entire block,
Close.
three on either side.
Four on one side, 2 on the other.
Okay. Where did the money come to acquire these properties?
It was totally financed by the seller.
So therefore, you're buying the properties, and prior to that, that property was paying taxes to the city of Stanton.
Correct.
And now you're acquiring the properties, and there'll be no more taxes coming to the city of Stanton, according to your business model.
Now, so far of the 20 properties, seven of the tenants of those 20 have been, replaced is not quite the correct word, but it's close. They're now, they fit our mission statement.
7 out of 20.
7 out of 20. The other 13 have been giving notices that because of our mission statement, and we're going to have them leave by November 30th of this year. We've given them all notices. We're working with them. And what we're going to do is we're working with one other institution around town, New Directions. And what we're going to do is replace them all with people that fit our mission statement. More people making $829 a month of income. And we already started the process. And that'll be done probably no later than June of next year, but most of them, probably 80% of them will be gone by the end of November.
Can I just ask one question,
Please.
Mayor? Mr. Siegel, you said you have 68 properties right now and you have a list of potentially 40 more
68 tenants.
I'm sorry, 68 tenants currently, and but you have a list of potentially 40 more. Do you have a limit to the number of future residents, a total that a magic number you would like to reach and that you would not like to go beyond?
Well, somebody at this board, I think last year, prior to the election, asked me that question, and I wasn't expecting it. And I said that it was really difficult to answer that question, but I answered 85. Okay. So here we are when we've just bought another 20 apartments, and we've got 40 of them sitting here. I'm not sure what the right answer is. I don't know whether this is because the retail market in Staunton is really tight. Or for some reason Staunton just got more homeless. Thank God we're not in San Francisco.
Right. And I ask that because when we're looking at finding financial sources, we have to be thinking about how many properties we'd be coming up with for money. So
Any other pertinent questions? I mean, we're running past time.
I was just curious on one other thing is this, when you're talking about their income, does that also include like food stamps and things like that, or?
No, that was the basic income. As
So like the social security or
food stamps or
disability.
food stamps or SNAP have changed quite a lot in the last 6 months. During the COVID epidemic, some of the food stamps payouts were in the middle 100 to 200 range, and some of them were over 200. Now, when I ask that question frequently, the number is somewhere between $35 and $50 a month. And that's only for foodstuffs. There's no money in there for cleaning supplies, toilet supplies, feminine hygiene products. We went to the Greater Augusta Area Realtors and asked for a grant, which they gave us. They gave us $7,400 to provide that other side of what food stamps doesn't provide. So we have members of the staff of our board who handle that kind of thing for us. They do surveys of what's needed, and then they spend that money to provide those kinds of things.
Can I?
Real quick, I'd like this to be the last comment because we
Lou,
are already 10
I
past.
just want to make sure, and the other board members, are you asking that basically your organization pays no taxes, or could your board conceivably pay a portion of a small percentage of those taxes if we could come up and find some monies to maybe donate to the organization to pay that rest? I'm just putting it out there. I'm just trying to, have that conversation.
Well, let me just say that what you're looking at here are numbers from an outside accounting source. We don't do our own. We moved it outside when I first was hired. And our accounting is handled by Chris McMackin's firm. And then our audit's handled by Andy Canaday. And so the numbers that you're seeing here that are actual are real numbers. Okay. And So, you know, if you said, okay, Siegel, say something, I would say, there's no room in there for taxes. But if you said, would you consider it? We might have to take it back to the board and have a conversation about it. But I don't know where, you know, it's hard enough to get those grants that we're looking at right there. It's very difficult.
Well,
And grants are, rents are secure income, you know? Grants change every year, every year or
they
2
do.
years.
We're well aware of that.
Yeah.
And so does our budget. It change every year.
Can I make
Yes,
a
sir.
Point about the taxes. I'm Dave Versmeyer. I'm chair of the board. Since we start.
Come
okay,
and speak at the.
So you're
yeah.
on the record.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
We
you.
gotta wrap this up.
I think what's important to understand regarding the taxes is that we haven't paid taxes since we started this organization. And we did approach the city about this, and the city said, you don't have to pay taxes. Now, apparently you don't have a record of that, but you also have almost 20 years of not getting taxes from us, and the city's survived just fine. And we're not gonna develop, you know, a whole lot more housing. So, and we will, if it's possible, legally possible, continue to try to not pay taxes, because all of the money that we make gets spent on taking care of our tenants. So there's no future loss to the city. You've already
Hold on a second.
gotten by without us paying taxes.
I'm not looking in the past, but I'm looking at the future.
Right, so am I.
Since 2020,
Mhm.
we've added 8, 10 properties that have
Correct.
come out of the tax paying basis and have gone non-tax paying. And this board here cannot continue to turn over property from a tax basis, a tax acquiring basis
Right.
to a tax-free.
I understand that.
So,
But-
so
but-
therefore,
but the-
therefore, we have to come up with a compromise.
The properties we owned prior to 2020 weren't taxed either.
I
And there was no-
understand that.
No.
I
harm to the
understand that.
city.
We're not trying to go back for
One
more than
important-
3 years.
One important point, where would these folks be if we couldn't?
Oh, that's a
comply?
very difficult question that I'm
They'd be
incapable of
they'd be
answering.
68 folks walking around Beverly Street probably.
I am not denying that, sir. I appreciate your mission. I want you to understand we are here to work with a solution.
Thank you.
And this board is very concerned about this, and we're very concerned about the people. Please make no future plans to expand your 68
We
to
have none.
85, assuming that you will get tax-free status, because we're not in a position to do that. We got to figure out how we're going to deal with the 68. All right, is that fair?
And we'd be happy to help you if
Good.
we can be available to do so.
I'm going to task the city staff to try to come up with a possible solution for us to debate. I know this is a difficult situation, but Mr. Haney, we appreciate you discovering the issue and bringing it to our attention. And so we need to be filled in on the numbers, and we're here to work with you. Please understand. But we're not in a situation where, as the city of Staunton, we can continue to take pieces of property, for instance, Staunton Glass, that produce tax, put more housing in it that doesn't produce tax. That's not in our.
And doesn't have any cost to the city of Staunton. That's what we do. It's a trade-off.
That's true. Thank you and your board. Appreciate hearing from you, and you have left us with a dilemma. So we will
And we feel
we'll
like
be
we're on the-
interested in working with.
We feel like we're on the horns of that dilemma. So,
Got it. Got it.
We
So
got it.
is that it? So staff will come up with some solutions. You'll
That's all
work
we can do at
together
this
with
point, I believe.
and bring it back at a future meeting? Do we decide on a future meeting, or does that?
I'll leave that up to Leslie. I don't know if this
Okay.
is going to be capable
I'll
of,
talk to Mr. Haney and we'll,
I don't know if we're going to be able to do this in 14 days or anything, but
figure something out. And if we need clarification, we'll reach
We'll
out.
be in touch.
Like, if you like, me or others of the board to come down and talk with you, be glad to do it.
Thank you so much. And
Thank
thank you all for your services on this, doing a valuable job for the
Thank
city.
you for your service. Honestly, thank you for what you
Appreciate
do.
All right.
Philip, it's good seeing you, buddy.
All right, that brings us to the update on Stanton's pathway to affordable housing and housing for working families. Ms. Beauregard.
Rebecca Joyce is here this evening, our housing planner, and I'm going to ask her to talk super fast. I know we are way behind, but I will let her go ahead and get started.
Okay,
Welcome.
that's a tough one, super fast. I'll just be brief. How about that?
I'll brief. That's good.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for letting me give you a very brief and quick update. Councilman Arrowood has mentioned his interest in the city's formation of a housing commission. And tonight I'd like to give you all an update and describe what steps we are on the housing path and what steps we will take in that direction. Just to remind you all, first let me mention the Staunton plan that you all approved on May 11th. The plan provides the city's values for how it works and a vision for the future. And under the economic development strategic area, you all prioritized affordable housing and housing for working families as item number 3. Okay, this will be the longest slide. Since starting with the city, I've been researching and reaching out to the organizations involved in housing and human services and what roles they play in affordable and workforce housing. As you can see, government, nonprofit, and private sector organizations play key roles in creating and sustaining Stanton's housing. I'd like to emphasize one category on the slide, which is called wraparound services. Affordable housing is not just about new construction or rehabbing existing structures. It's also about creating an environment of stability for someone so that once they have housing, they can keep it and thrive. Everyday things like reliable transportation and childcare or lack of them can determine a person's housing success. If you'll notice, I've put a heart on this category and a heart on the house. That's so that we always remember that housing isn't about buildings, but it's about people. And members of our community are finding it increasingly difficult to find a place to call home here. So where are we now? So let's talk about that. The CDBG program is a useful resource. By passing funding down to local housing providers and public service agencies, the city is able to help some of our most vulnerable community members find stability in housing assistance. Housing assistance that includes supportive, transitional, rental, and home ownership. But there are limits to what the CDBG funds can do. For example, only 15% can be used for public services. The funding the city receives from the block grant program alone is not enough to increase affordable or workforce housing. The city is privileged to have many local and regional partners on the housing path with us. Here's a list of the organizations and housing groups I have connected with over the past few months. Some are in the room: Valley Supportive Housing, Capsol, I think is still here. They are providing so many necessary services and doing such wonderful work. They have graciously welcomed me to a seat at many of their tables, and as they try to deal with the current housing crisis and as they struggle with limited staff and funding. Okay. Oh, okay. So let's talk about what the next steps are. Over the next 9 months, we would like to take some thoughtful steps in 2 phases so we can create a robust housing program by first building a strong foundation for it. In the fall and winter of 2023, we'd like to educate ourselves and provide some opportunities for you all with relevant guest speakers and other educational opportunities so we can expand our knowledge base and learn about what the current housing situation really is. I'm gonna put together a survey and we're gonna distribute it to housing providers, developers, owners of rental properties, large employers, and other stakeholders to see what policies and things the city could do to make it easier for them in terms of housing. We are going to attend the Staunton, Augusta, Waynesboro Housing Summit, which is going to be held on October 11th through 12th. We're going to create a task list of housing-related activities that the city is currently doing or could do without additional funding and minimal staff effort to further affordable housing and workforce housing. And we're going to look for funding sources, either federal or state grants or technical assistance opportunities to conduct a housing and or develop a land inventory and a housing strategic plan so that we can assess what things we have out there, what things we have that could be potential for housing. We don't have a great picture of that right now. In the winter and spring of 2024, we are going to be heavily involved with the Community Development Block Grant 5-year consolidated plan update. We have to do a lot of input and citizen input gathering, public meetings, stakeholder meetings. We're going to take that opportunity to gather input from citizens about housing needs. We're also going to look to see if there are ways we can leverage the CDBG funds through the city budgeting process to see if we can find a way to fund additional support to housing providers and the city staff to increase the amount and quality of affordable housing that is available. And we also are going to explore the potential of creating a housing committee or commission, define its role, the requirements and responsibilities of its members, and a funding source to staff it. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next 9 months. These 2 phases will allow us to truly understand what specific housing challenges impact our community and choose a path forward to remove barriers and create housing opportunities for all those who want to live and work here. Everyone deserves a home that is safe, sound, and affordable. Thank you. City staff will continue to engage you all on the progress of the program. We hope you will join us on the housing path as we start the next steps of the journey. And please feel free to reach out to me anytime with any questions or needs for information or anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Leslie, was that quick enough?
That was great.
That was very
That was
good.
perfect, actually. Thank you.
Questions from council?
No, I talked to Rebecca a lot. So, yeah.
Well, when it comes to housing, I'll look at you. first.
Right, you go ahead. This is all happening. So we're in process. It's just such a huge and deep need as you know, evidenced by the last item
Yes.
on there, and so
Yes.
many different aspects to it. And I commend Rebecca for digging deep into this, and we're moving forward with this and trying to be as effective as we possibly can. So I thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right, does that bring us to a closed meeting, item 4? I will. Who's going to read the motion?
I've got it here.
All right, thank
This
you.
is Terry
Counselor
Holmes.
Holmes.
I move to enter a closed meeting for 1, discussion or consideration of disposition of publicly held real property located at Staunton Crossing, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3 and discussion of consideration of the disposition of publicly held right-of-ways located near the intersection of Peck Street and Montgomery Avenue, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A3.
Thank you, Counselor Holmes. The motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Counselor Robertson. All right, Mr. Kesker.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye. Thank you.
Yes.
It is cold.
Good evening, 7 o'clock, and we're going to have to come out of a closed session before we start this meeting.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council reconvene an open meeting and certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only lawfully exempted public business matters were discussed and that only public business matters as identified in the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
I second that. This is Terry Holmes.
Thank you. Mr. Kesker?
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you for that little bit of housekeeping. That brings us to the call to order. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And tonight, it is my honor to bring the invocation. So if you care to join me in prayer, please bow your head. Heavenly Father, we pray to you this evening to watch over our school children. August brings the return of our children to the classrooms. We need to remember all citizens need to be responsive for the education of our youth, regardless whether or not they have school-aged children. The future of America is in our children. We must all encourage, support, assist, and guide those that have not yet experienced what we have in life's journey. We pray for our students, our teachers, our parents, our administrators, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, our resource officers, our school secretaries, our custodial staff, and all who interact with our children. We pray for all who are homeschooled. Heavenly Father, please watch, protect, guide, and love our children. Amen.
Amen.
All right, that brings us to the mayor's report. And tonight I am aware of the fact that we have quite a packed agenda, and I will keep it short and simple. This is the second month that we are only having one meeting per month. We have all enjoyed our summer vacation, but we have to get back to work tonight. So I will open it up to other members of council. Do you have anything to report? Who wants to go?
You say something.
Brad, go ahead.
Anything? Okay, I had a chance to talk to Miss Susie King, who is organizing they're calling it Save the Shea House, or like kind of a fundraising event and discussion. Now, the Shea House is the house that's in the Fairview Cemetery. That's the one by the main post office. And that one is just kind of a 1855 survivor house that's just such an interesting architectural piece. And the Fairview Cemetery is a old line African-American cemetery that's just been there in place. There are a number of volunteers trying to work to get it into better shape, but it needs some help. And it's the congregations of the Augusta Street United Methodist Church and Mount Zion Baptist Church that jointly own it. And so they're trying to organize and get that in better condition. They're holding a meeting this Saturday at the Augusta Street United Methodist at 2. So if anyone can come to that, if you can get involved, that would be wonderful.
Thank you.
Robertson. Yeah, I'd like to kind of get this out there. First of all, I think all of us have seen on the reports everything, the devastation that has happened in the great state of Hawaii. And the death toll continues to rise. It's over 100 now, and still over 800 are missing. And they say that, you know, the fires became so hot that it actually melted metal. So some people may never, ever be found. I personally hope to donate and plan on donating to that recovery process. I ask that all of you and all of our citizens of Staunton that can find it in their heart, if they can, to possibly donate to that process as well. And then the other thing that I've talked to our city attorney about, and I've mentioned it to our city manager, Leslie, and to see if the members of council, how they feel about it. And if so, maybe by the next meeting or the one after, they can present us with some ideas. Our city attorney did say that if the city makes a donation on behalf of the citizens to the recovery process in Hawaii, that it would have to be to an organization, as I understand it, that exists and helps us here, that then could be given here and sent to Hawaii. We can't just say, okay, we're going to give it to some organization that has nothing to do with the city of Staunton. So, and I've talked to our money people, and they said that we can come up with some amount of money, whether it be $1,000, whether it be 2,000, that is very doable on behalf of the citizens. So I reckon real quick, I'm going to ask the other council members, do you think, is this something that you'd be willing to do on behalf of the citizens? Yes, no, whether we proceed on it.
I think that,
Yeah.
I think that'd be nice.
Okay, so
Once you work that out.
yeah, and we'll see if we can present something next at our next meeting and get all the legalities of it. Thank you all very much. I
Thank you,
appreciate
Mark,
that.
for looking into that. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Counselor Edwards.
I'm just reporting out from the last Library Advisory Board Committee meeting. Wow, I put a lot of words in there. Library Advisory Board meeting. I think it's just amazing how loved and used our library is. And I just want to give you a few facts and figures that really blew me away. Just in the month of July, there were 13,155 visits to our library. There were 695 computer users. Many people don't have computers at home and they use them at our library. 22,590 items were checked out in 1 month. And in a city of less than 26,000 people, we have 16,390 library cards at our library. And it's just a testament to how hard our library staff works, how much this community supports our library. And so I wanted to share that with you all.
Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Anyone else? Any comments? All right. We're going to go begin the regular meeting then. And I want to talk a minute about the consent agenda. The consent agenda exists per procedure memorandum number 14. It is the policy of City Council to have routine, non-controversial items placed in a consent agenda. All items on a consent agenda will be voted on in one motion. If separate discussion of an item is requested by any member of council, that item shall be removed and considered separately at the end of the agenda. So do council members desire to have any items removed from the consent agenda to be placed on the regular meeting agenda for separate consideration? Members of council?
No, sir.
This is an attempt to speed up some of the routine things. I served on the Community Foundation in Central Blue Ridge, and they use the consent agenda all the time with their organization, and it really does pick up the pace and makes it a lot easier for routine items. And the routine items that are considered tonight will be the approval of minutes from the work session regular meetings of the 27th, special meeting of July 31st, consideration of an ordinance to amend the budget ordinance by adding budget amendment number 1, approval of transfer of already appropriated funds within the capital improvement fund, approval of proclamation to be presented to council chambers at the September 14th meeting. So I will now accept a motion from a member of council.
Mayor Claffey,
Yes, Councilor Woods.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Motion has been made. Is there a second? Mark Robertson is a second. Mr. Kester.
Miss Edwards,
Aye. Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
That was pretty quick. That's
It was
pretty
very quick. We
painless
saved a lot of
there. That picked us up some time. Very good. It brings us to the first item on our first of many public hearings, Ms. Beauregard.
Would you like me to read the item
Oh,
or would you like to
certainly.
read it?
I'll let you
All
read it.
right, I get to read it tonight. Item B is a public hearing in consideration to amend A, an ordinance adopted September 8th, 2022, and B, a bond resolution adopted September 22nd, 2022, that will authorize proceeds of the 2022 bond to be applied to finance costs not only of the Gardner Springs Pump Station project, but also of other capital and projects related to the city's water system. And I think because that was so long, the mayor did not want to read that.
That's right. I knew what I was doing.
But Jesse Moyer, to explain this in a layperson's term, Jesse Moyer is our Chief Finance Officer, will do that right now for us.
Good
Welcome.
evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council.
Good evening.
I am
Jesse.
very excited to be in front of you this evening with this agenda item. This is good news for our water fund. A little over a year ago, staff applied for a VDH Office on Drinking Water grant for our Gardner Springs project. The Office on Drinking Water had $100 million of ARPA funding for small and disadvantaged water systems. It was our hope to use this toward the Gardner Springs pump station. Ultimately, though, we got denied. There were more projects than there was funding. And then we had to seek the debt funding to cover the project. So to our surprise, about a month ago, BDH reached out to us and wanted to know if we were still doing the project. And we said, yes, it's well underway. And they wanted to know if we were still interested in grant funding. Well, of course, the answer is always yes. So staff let them know that we would be interested and that we've been approved for $5.93 million to help with that project. So, and we believe this may be due to the fact that these projects take a lot of planning and there are encumbrance and expenditure deadlines tied to this ARPA money. And we have been working on the Gardner Springs project since 2017.
Yes.
That's when we started the feasibility study. We took a little break because of COVID. We didn't want to take out debt or pursue anything during that time, but it took us a long time to get shovel ready. So therefore, we won't have any trouble meeting their deadlines to have it all spent by December 2026. And this has led to the agenda item before you this evening. The bonds issued last fall were general obligation bonds, but the related ordinance and bond resolution specifically mentions the Gardner Springs Pump Station project. Now that we've received the ARPA funds, it's going to free up some of those debt funds. And while staff has not identified the particular project that we will spend this funding on, it will be major infrastructure like water lines or a water tower. Under the advice from our bond counsel, we are before you this evening to request that the language in the ordinance and the bond resolution be updated to reflect that the proceeds may be used for other capital improvement projects in the water fund, not just Gardner Springs. This action, it does require a public hearing, which was properly advertised August 10th and then again on August 17th. And that would take place right after my review. And that concludes everything that I had to cover. I can take questions now, or if you don't have any, we can proceed to the public hearing.
Do any members of council have questions of Ms. Moyers? This is wonderful news.
Very exciting.
Everybody ready to go to the public hearing?
Did you have something, Michelle?
Yeah, Jesse, I'm sorry, you said the project is shovel ready, so it has to be spent.
It's already started.
So it's already started. So, okay, thank you.
I think they've done the majority of the rock removal to start
Okay.
the building of the pump station.
Okay.
All right, with that, in a moment, I'm going to open up the public hearing. It is a time that council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a specific topic, in this case, the water issue. We ask that you please give your name, your address, keep your remarks at 5 minutes or less. When you reach the 5-minute time limit, I'll let you know that your time limit has expired. For any Zoom participants, please raise your hand now if you wish to speak on this particular matter. If you raise your hand during this public hearing, you will also be able to raise your hand during other public hearings as well as matters from the public. Once everyone has had an opportunity to speak, I will close the public hearing. The public hearing is open. Recognize.
You recognize me?
Absolutely.
I'm Brenda Mead. I live on Sherwood Avenue in Staunton. First, I support the amendments to the September 8th ordinance and the September 22nd bond resolution. And I thank you, Joe Biden. The city has received a windfall. Virginia Department of Health awarded the city $5.93 million of ARPA funding for the Gardner Springs project. The receipt of grant funds for this project will allow the use of the 2022 bond funds for another water infrastructure project. I think three things should happen. First, this money could be used to jumpstart the Uniontown water and sewer projects. None of those projects are on the city's CIP at this moment for the water funds, water or sewer. Second, in addition to allocating a significant portion of these funds to Uniontown water infrastructure, the city must waive sewer and water connection fees for longtime Uniontown property owners. City Council has already approved the presentation of legislation to the General Assembly to give the city the right to waive or reduce connection fees for longtime Uniontown property owners. City Council can't just sit on its hands and expect this legislation to get the support it needs. We have hired lobbyists in the past and gotten very good results with the General Assembly. John Avoli and Emmett Hanger are still our elected representatives. They may be lame ducks, but they still represent us in the General Assembly. Just as they supported Augusta County's removal of the courthouse, they should be asked to propose and support the legislation we need for Uniontown. Third, the Uniontown rezoning to more appropriate uses authorized by the Planning Commission on August 17th must be fast-tracked. We can't wait another year. All of the above are critical, and it's way past time to rectify the injustice of Uniontown's neglect. Thank you.
Mr. Kesker, is anyone online?
No, sir.
Would anyone else like to speak on the water issue? All right, with that, I close the public hearing. I will now accept the motion. Councilor Robertson.
I move that the city council approve the amended ordinance and bond resolution authorizing the use of the $8.5 million general obligation bonds for capital improvement projects related to the city's water system and not limit the purpose solely to the Gardner Springs Pump Station project as presented.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second. Terry Holmes.
Councilor Holmes has seconded. Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Airwood,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, item C is a public hearing and consideration of an amendment to Staunton City Code 18.85 Historical Preservation District of Title 18 zoning to reference the Staunton, Virginia Historical District Design Guidelines. Ms. Boger.
Rodney Rhodes, Senior Planner, will walk through this item this evening.
Thank you, Mayor Claffey, City Council members. This I consider a housekeeping matter. However, I apologize. I treated it as such, and I believe a little bit more background was should have been included in the staff briefing on this. Prior to 2018, the city of Staunton, when reviewing applications for certificates of appropriateness in the historic district, would review those in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards and guidelines. And also the city had some guidelines. However, those guidelines were specific for residential properties. And we needed something to address commercial properties because obviously those are a little bit different than a residential house as far as their architectural design and issues. So we received a grant for a consultant to work on these guidelines. And we hired Fraser and Associates to do those. And in 2018, working with staff, Historic Staunton Foundation, the Historic Preservation Commission, and the Planning Commission drafted these guidelines, which went through the public hearing process and eventually were adopted by City Council in 2018. Basically, these are based on the federal standards and guidelines, but they're put in layperson language, and they're custom a little bit for Staunton. So there's no new or additional requirements in the historic districts from this. I think it's a very useful tool for the public, for them to go and look at when they're considering what they're going to do to their property. And it's very beneficial when we review those applications before approving them. So that was done in 2018. And this, question, why wasn't this language included in the ordinance in 2018? Well, we took this language to the Historic Preservation Commission, and they said, yes, of course, we need to, that's a done deal. We need to put that in the ordinance. However, let's start looking at our definitions and see if we need to modify them. Let's look at this section and that section. And it became a much bigger thing. Shortly after that, a staff member had to leave the office for 6 months to take care of a ailing family member. So we had to, with existing staff, pick up that slack. The person that is the principal person, staff person for the Historic Preservation Commission told me, said, Rodney, I'm just going to keep the office open and the permits coming and going. I don't have time to do this. And I said, this isn't a priority. So it's put to the side, and then something called COVID hit, and it was put aside again. And frankly, after that, I forgot about it. So it's just purely an oversight. It's a simple amendment that references this as far as one of the tools that we use when reviewing and approving certificates of appropriateness. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this. Another mistake in the staff briefings, that was on July 20th, not the 21st. I was consistent because I was wrong on all the staff briefings for tonight. But after conducting a public hearing, no one spoke in opposition, and on a 5-0 vote, the commission voted to recommend approval of this zoning text amendment. I'd be glad to take any questions you have now or after you conduct the public hearing.
I'm just going to make one brief comment on this. When this came up on our agenda, I noted that it all happened in 2018. And out of all the people on the dais, only Terry Holmes was here. So therefore, only one person out of our city attorneys, city public works, everybody. And I think that maybe we need to peruse the brochure you have before we do this, because basically it was all discussed long before our time. And so maybe we could schedule a work session that we would, you could bring us up to date. I am aware that on the corridor overlay, we have taken over 400 pages of regulations, and Fraser and Associates has cut it down to 45. So in the interest of, analyzing definitions and the like, maybe you could clue us in at a future work session, as opposed to us approving something that we've never heard discussed before.
You can make a motion for that. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that city.
I have a question before you do
Okay,
that.
well, let's do questions.
Rodney, did y'all update the definitions and stuff that you were?
No, sir, we have not gone through that more in-depth review and edit.
I just, due to that, and maybe till we can have, like I said, further meetings and take a look, especially going from 400 and some odd pages to 45. I'd like to make a motion that city council table this or postpone this to a later meeting, that we can have a chance to, give staff, a chance to look at definitions, close, dot all the I's, the T's, and then we can actually discuss it before we actually take a vote on it.
In the interest of saving time, I recommend we table it tonight and look into it at a later date. A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Alice Woods, second. All right, Mr. Kester.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, that brings us to D, public hearing and consideration of a request by Staunton Apartments LLC to rezone the R3 medium density residential conditional zoning of Middlebrook Park by reducing the minimum required side and rear setbacks from 75 feet to 60 feet when property abuts existing residential properties.
Mr. Rhodes.
Straight to Mr. Rhodes. Welcome back.
Back.
Thank you. As the mayor noted in the introduction to this, this is a request to change the conditional zoning at Staunton Apartments LLC for the Middlebrook Park development. Back when it was developed, and it's about 120 acres, it was zoned local business district conditional, light industrial district conditional, medium density residential district conditional. And these conditions that were proffered with the rezoning included various restrictions, and one in particular required additional setback buffers between this development and surrounding properties. It required a 75-foot vegetated buffer. And they are requesting to amend that to reduce that down to 60. Staff has reviewed this, does not see any issues. Staff believes that the 60-foot vegetative buffer should be sufficient to buffer from the adjoining properties. I would note that the adjoining properties are zoned medium density, no conditions. So most of them are single-family developed residential, but they could be combined and redeveloped with multifamily, same as on the other side of the property line, with a 30-foot non-vegetated buffer. So reducing it to 60, we think is fair. The applicant is requesting this because this will help with their current alignment in that development. It will be costly for them to change that alignment, to change the access roads, the parking, the arrangement of the next units without this reduction. So we're trying to be development friendly, and we see no issue and or no issues with this proposed amendment. I'll be glad to take any, on July 20th, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing. No one spoke in opposition, and on 4-0 with one member abstaining, the commission voted to recommend approval of the conditional rezoning. I'll be glad to take any questions you have now or after you conduct a public hearing.
Members of council.
Mr. Rhodes, I was just wondering, has there been any pushback from any of the adjoining property owners or properties? Is this an issue for?
I have not heard any comments from adjoining property owners. We sent notices to all adjoining property owners.
Questions from councilors?
I would note that Daniel Hansen from Balzer Associates is here representing the applicant.
Would he like to speak?
And Daniel, can I ask you a quick question before you speak?
Ma'am.
Why was the additional footage requested in the first place to 75 feet and then asked to go back to 60?
Good question. So that dates back to about 2003, which actually predates me even at Balzer and Associates. So, but my understanding was the development was going in, and there at the time there was some question about buffering, and this as industrial and as medium density residential, it could be everything could be developed all the way up to
I see.
and I think it was the developer at the time it was more just a way to kind of appease the neighbors. So 75 was somewhat arbitrary. That's what, so moving it back to 60 still provides quite a buffer. I mean, it's still probably one of the most restricted buffers in the city, I would imagine, for residential developments. But it really would help with the one property we're looking at right now. I would note if you look at your maps, it affects about 12 properties or so. roughly half of them are already developed. So really, while it technically affects them, there's not really anything they can do with 15 more feet because the building's already built, you know? And I apologize, members of the council, I just thought I'd answer the question first.
No, go right
Thank you.
ahead.
Thank you, Jamie.
I don't really have a whole lot more to add. I think Mr. Rhodes did a great job introducing it, but obviously if you have any other questions, be happy to do my best to answer those as well.
Thank you.
All right, I will now open up the public hearings. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium. We will alternate between individuals physically present and those who have their hands raised versus Zoom. Public hearing is open. Would anyone like to speak on the Middlebrook Park minimum rear and side setbacks? Mr. Kester, is anybody online?
No, sir.
No one wishes to speak? I close the public hearing. All right, I'll now entertain a motion.
Mayor Claffey,
Counselor Dermy.
I move that council adopt the ordinance and approve the conditional rezoning as recommended by the planning commission.
Motion has been made and second. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Counselor Arrowood, thank you. Mr. Kester.
Ms. Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Holmes.
Aye.
Mr. Robertson.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Ms. Edwards.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Brings us to item E, public hearing and consideration of a request by Ian and Leslie Bowden to rezone 1106 North Augusta Street from P1 Professional District to B1 Local Business District Conditional.
Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you once again.
Welcome back.
Hi. As the mayor noted, Ian and Leslie Bowden have requested a rezoning of 1106 North Augusta Street from P1 Professional District to B1 Local Business District Conditionals. The Bowdens have recently purchased the property and plan to utilize the property as a small fine dining restaurant and short-term guest rooms. I would note that in the P1 current district, the guest rooms are allowed use. Up to 9 guests can be there either as a boarding facility or rooming facility. And the Bowdens have proffered, and I would note those have changed a couple of times from the original application, which is not unusual in conditional zoning. And I believe the clerk is going to pass out the latest proffers. There's only one change from what was in your packet. Now they are reducing the number of lodging units on the upper floors of the main building to 2. It was 4 when it went to planning commission, was reduced to 3 due to some architectural constraints, and now it's been reduced to 2 in the main building. They are also requesting to have up to 2 units in the accessory units, accessory structures. There's currently a cottage in the back of the property that's set up as a residential unit. And they would also like the potential to develop the detached garage into another lodging unit. So there'd be a maximum of 4 lodging units on this property and a 24-seat restaurant. That is the only uses that would be permitted out of the B2 district. Otherwise, those would be the only uses, and of course, allowing signage and that type of thing. When staff reviewed this, I guess our first concern was with parking. And I do have a parking exhibit that was in the packet, and that has been modified today slightly. With a 24-seat restaurant and 4 guest rooms, there is a parking requirement on the zoning code of 1 parking space for every 3 seats of the dining room and 1 parking space for each guest room. So that requires 12 spaces. This is in an entrance corridor. And one of the benefits of being in an entrance corridor for a developer is there is basically an automatic 10% reduction in required parking. And then there's also if you're in an entrance corridor, a 10% reduction if you have on-street parking within 200 feet of the subject property. So this property, because it's in an entrance corridor, unlike somewhere else in the city, gets that, basically a 20% reduction. Therefore, only 10 off-street parking spaces are required. The Bowdens can provide 6 spaces in the front of the building off North Augusta Street. That will take a little bit of modifying to that current parking lot. It will have to be of a sealed surface. The spaces will have to be marked. There will have to be an ADA compliant space. All that would have to be done. And there's also 2 existing spaces behind the cottage. So there are 8 spaces on site. And it's a little bit different than what was in the briefing that you received last week. But now they have an agreement to have 2 spaces on the adjoining property. Let me get that address. It's to the left of the property. I think that's 1104. Before there was 1 space there. He was also looking at a couple spaces over at Breezy Hill Spa, but those are not part of the application tonight. Staff did analysis of where the on-street parking is available within 200 feet of this property and found that there are 4 spaces on North Augusta between this property and I'm gonna get these names wrong, Graston Street. 4 parking spaces on Dover, 3 parking on Purviance, 4 on Bagby, and up to 18 on Grassley Street that are within that 200 feet. So there is quite a bit of parking in that vicinity. And now, a lot of these other streets are not marked for no parking. However, we do think that they would be problematic and did not include that in our exhibit. Overlook for one, that is not marked as no on-street parking, but that would be really problematic if people started parking there. I would note that there's a section in the city code that prohibits parking near an intersection. But we don't have, many of our streets have signage that says no parking between here and the corner. If this became an issue, maybe that's something that the city may need to look into. I believe it has to be set back at least 20 feet from any intersection. I would note that if this is approved at the rezoning stage, that the applicant would need to submit either a minor site plan or site sketch that would lay out the parking, show how it would be, modified, what kind of surface it would have. Would also include information on the buffering requirements. There is a buffering requirement from the adjoining residential property. And I had the city horticulturist go out there and take a look at it. And he is recommending a different type of boxwood between this property and the condos. He said this boxwood grows to, it's a column form boxwood and grows rather quickly to a 15-foot height and would provide more appropriate screening. Also, we would look at any kind of lighting at this facility. I've talked to the applicants and they are not proposing any pole mounted lighting. However, being an entrance corridor, we have what I think is helpful for the adjoining properties, a restriction on how much light can be at the park line. And in the entrance corridor, only a half a foot candle can be at the property line. There have been some concerns about noise coming from this property. This would fall under the city's noise ordinance that prohibits anything above 65 decibels between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. At the property line of any adjoining residential property. I talked to Captain Brian before this meeting and he concurred with me that 65 decibels is a conversation, normal conversation. That's what 65 decibel levels is equivalent to. I would note the Stanton Comprehensive Plan designates this site as residential, and obviously, even the current zoning of professional it does not is not consistent with that. Neither is the proposed business district. However, based on the mixture of uses in this area and mixture of zoning districts, this is an area that's screaming for the Plan Commission to look at when we update the comprehensive plan next year to maybe come up with a better balance there. Staff is supporting this proposal. Staff believes that this is a reasonable use of the property, a benefit to the city. It is very restrictive as far as what can go at this property. It's not just a blanket commercial zoning. You're not going to have a 24/7, convenience store go in there under this proffered rezoning. And the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this on July 20th. During the public hearing, 3 individuals spoke in opposition to the request, citing primarily traffic, parking, and noise concerns. And I would correct the vote on that. It was 3-1 with 1 member abstaining to recommend approval of the conditional rezoning. I'd be glad to take any questions you have at this time.
Rodney, it was an Airbnb before, right?
They were approved for one. I'm not sure that they ever opened up. Okay.
So it's going to be similar. You know, I can tell you now the 24-seat restaurant that Ian runs, or the one he runs now, doesn't produce a lot of noise, you know, because I go by there all the time and it's pretty quiet.
Rodney, do you know the previous B&B that was just mentioned, how many like units did that house as far as like for guests and things?
Yeah, our records say it was the Artist House Bed and Breakfast. I do not know how many units that they provided.
3.
So that'd be the same as what's being proposed now.
That's what I was getting at, so.
And how long ago was that for the B&B cottage?
I don't know when that.
Rodney, the 4 sites for parking on Augusta Street have never had parking on them in my life. And I am very concerned. There's a slight grade there. I mean, there's a turn or as you come around Breezy Hill.
Yeah, staff looked at this and I understand that that has not been an area that has on a regular basis or ever, to your knowledge, seen a car there. But it does allow on-street parking there, and it's potential. Staff did see an issue with anything north of this site on North Augusta being more problematic.
Because of the curve.
Yeah.
It may be more illustrative of the lack of demand.
Rodney, can you talk about outdoor seating? Because I think that's what some of the issues were brought up by neighbors. I understand that they're going to have one. I suppose we'll hear that when.
Yeah.
Okay, then I can just go ahead and ask Ian.
That would be permitted. The applicant has talked to me about having a couple tables out there underneath that big tree. He also informed me that to date, the shack has had 5 tables that were seated outside this entire year. Of course, it's been unusually hot, I think, but they want to have that as an option.
Okay. And when you say there's not going to be any lighting, but there might be one outdoor lamp, and you say, but it's restricted to 1/2 of a foot candle.
No, I didn't say there wouldn't be any lighting, but the applicant said they do not plan to have any pole mounted lighting. There may be some low level lighting for safety but yes.
So nothing that would glare in a neighbor's window, for example.
That's correct.
Got
it. Ian, make sure, what is the cutoff time as far as the restaurant would be?
He's going to speak in.
You want Ian to?
Or,
I mean,
Are we going to allow the applicants to speak?
yeah, okay. Well, we'll do that. Yeah. And then I've got one other question too about that.
Any other questions of Rodney, and then we'll ask the Bowdens to speak?
Just got one question. Which side would the outside dining be on? If you, of the building, which side of the,
this being behind the building.
behind the building? Okay.
Anything else?
No, but are we going to ask the applicants to speak, please?
Good evening. Thank you
Good
so
evening.
much. So I just wanted to go over a couple things and then I'd be happy to take some questions from everybody. If you don't know, I'm Ian Bowden. I own a restaurant in Staunton called The Shack. It's been open, it'll be 10 years as of July. My wife, Leslie, owns a hair salon in town, and she's been in business for herself for double that in Staunton. So, you know, we are both business owners in town. We both have wonderful reputations in town as far as not just with our guests and our clientele, but also with the community in general. It's actually one of our drives for doing this project, but all of our projects is trying to support our community as much as possible. You know, when I moved to Staunton in 2007, I was the first restaurant to start purchasing local food from the farmers markets. There was a couple exceptions, but not many. And we've continued to do so. And for me, and I know you all are very aware, economically speaking, the more money you spend in your local economy, the better it is for your community. So with this additional business for us, the intent is to double that. So we'll be doubling the amount of jobs we're providing. We also be doubling the amount of product that we're purchasing locally, which is more support for our local community. I do want to talk about some of the issues that were raised, and I know the letter that you guys have received. Would you guys like me to address those, or would you want to ask questions first, and then we can go back over the things?
Go ahead, you do yours.
Okay, I have to put on my glasses because I can't see anything. So the first comment that was made in the letter was the issue of trash and garbage. So we are going to be operating a very expensive, high-end inn that has a fine dining restaurant, and the appearance of that is of the utmost importance, not just for me and my pride, but also for my guests and perception. So visuals are super important in a situation like that. So obviously we will take extra care with how our trash is stored, where it is stored, and how we dispose of our trash. In the comments, it was also asked whether we'd be using Overlook to put out our trash or Augusta for our trash. And the answer to that is we will be using both. We will have at least 2 water bills, and on those 2 water bills, we will have 2 trash pickups that we have to pay for. We'll also be paying runoff for 2, and we'll also be paying the litter tax for 2. So yes, we will be using both places for our trash pickup. But on Overlook in particular, which is I think where most of the concern seems to be, that will be all garbage that is generated by the 2-room cottage that people will be renting for up to 3 days. So it's minimal. It's less than you would produce in your home with a family of 4. The second thing was the parking. You know, I completely understand the parking. It's something that we've actually spent the majority of our time. In fact, the first thing that we did when we started looking at this project, after speaking to Mr. Rhodes and Mr. Hartless, was figuring out how we were going to plot parking and how we could make that happen. And I feel like we've satisfied that. I know there's more questions about it. I'm happy to answer them, but in general, I feel like we've satisfied those as far as the zoning board was concerned. There was a comment made a loss of property value because of being next to a restaurant. And we all know that the Staunton market is extremely strong. We also know that it's hard to find a house because there's no inventory. So, I mean, you know, I don't know what I can say to ease somebody's concern about that. But I mean, once again, our intent here is not to harm, get in the way, or disturb anybody. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to help build our community. The outdoor dining, I know there's a couple questions about that as well. You know, so there is the main property, which is up front, which faces North Augusta, and there's the smaller property, which faces Overlook. From the front of the main property, the dining would be underneath. Have you all been out to the property? Yeah, okay, so it'd be under that huge tree that has draped all the way down to the ground, right? And at most, we would have 3 tables out there. The reality is, as mentioned by Mr. Rhodes, the reality is that most of our guests don't want to sit outside. Part of what we do is about entertainment. Some people go to the movies, some people go to theater, some people go to fine dining restaurants, and our restaurant is one of those restaurants. So they want to be near the kitchen. They want to see the action. They want to see what's going on. They want to see the performance. So the majority of our guests won't be doing it. Additionally, it's very limited as to how much outdoor seating we can do because of weather. There's always an issue. There's always inclement weather. There's always something going on. So, I mean, it's very minimal and it's very seasonal. The next was parking. Parking at the cottage itself and being disturbed or awakened by cars, laughter, car doors slamming, things of that nature, coming in and out of that. Once again, if you have neighbors, you sometimes have issues. Obviously we want to not have issues at all. But I feel like people are responsible, and I think people will take responsibility for themselves as far as that goes. I think that pretty much covers the majority of the letter. Be happy to take any questions.
Just wanted to ask Ian, like,
yes, sir.
How late, if you did have outdoor dining?
Yes, sir. So
what is the cutoff hours?
So the way our restaurant works is we do, we're only open 3 days a week and we do 2 seatings a night. So we basically take reservations from 5 to 5:45 and then again from 7:45 to 8:15. And so it's not like a regular, it's not like Terry's restaurant where you can go and people are just coming all night long, right? Everything is staged and it's an intentional staging. It allows us to do what we do. So on the late side, 10:30, 11 o'clock, but if we had tables that were out there at any time like that, I would insist that they come inside, which is never an issue. Guests are usually pretty understanding about things like that. But once again, once it starts to get dark out, generally speaking, people want to come back inside. Yeah.
Would there ever be any possibility of indoor or outdoor music?
If we did it, it would be during the day and something very quiet. Okay. A solo guitarist, my father plays flute, it could be something like that, but nothing. It's not like we're gonna have a rock band playing out there.
Okay.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Rhodes, talked about parking, 1 space to every 3 seating.
Yes, ma'am.
But I didn't hear anything mentioned about staff parking.
So staff parking is 1 space per three employees. I believe that was what the code is. Is that right?
So does that make it additional to?
No, that's included in the.
That's included?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You had mentioned about getting parking at Breezy Hill.
Yes, sir.
And the last proposal wasn't included.
Yeah, so basically there's an additional space that's attached to the cottage that I believe we showed you when you came through that we would like to eventually build into another room. And if we do that, we realize that we'll need additional parking. We have been in contact with Breezy Hill when we first started the project. My wife Leslie reached out to them and asked if they'd be willing or able to allow us to rent a couple spaces. They said yes, but we didn't follow up because we weren't sure what was happening as far as this meeting goes. And honestly, what we're doing is a very large investment for us. The thought of committing to something that's going to cost me money when I don't know whether or not I'm actually going to be able to execute, it's bad business. So basically we pulled that off the board for now. And if it comes back into play, we will most definitely go through the right channels to make sure that happens properly.
What about that lot that has the basketball court on it at the corner?
So actually that's Miss Mitchell's, and it's up there. It's behind 1104. And she has the paper that you guys were handed at the beginning of this session states that she has allowed us to use 2 spaces there.
I believe that lot has 9 spaces when I went by and counted.
I can't remember exactly how many it has. Do you remember?
She owns it.
Yeah, it's 8.
She owns it.
Yeah, it's part of her property.
I understand that, but I'm just wondering. Is there a reason why it's restricted to only two being available, or is that all you had committed to? Or?
I mean, honestly, I mean, that's what we need for right now. So I have trouble asking anybody for anything, to be brutally honest. It was hard enough for me to ask her if it was okay if we could, have two spots from her. So I try not to push it with things of that nature. I would much rather, pay Breezy Hill what they were asking than ask somebody who's been very nice and charitable and appreciative of us, to overgive.
Ian, on a different aspect of this, so right now you operate the shack.
Yes, sir.
And is the shack effectively moving to this property?
No, sir. So the plan is to, yes, I'm sorry. Yes. The fine dining aspect of the shack is going to be moving to this new property. And in the place of the shack, we're opening something much more casual. Well, basically like the shack was when we first opened. So we'll offer a lighter atmosphere, a lot less serious, a lot more fun. So like I said in the beginning, the whole idea is to, operate two restaurants and therefore double our revenue, double our tax dollars, double the tourism,
So from one restaurant to two restaurants and a B&B.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Further questions from counselors? Mr. Bowden?
I don't see any, it seems like there's enough parking in the general vicinity. Even if you did restrict parking on Overlook, so I think that they would be able to fill not have any problems there. I go through that neighborhood a lot, and it's there's a lot of, the street back there is narrow, Overlook and Bagby, but there's some parking other places too that I think would satisfy it.
They have 10 called out specific spots for themselves and 33 within 200 feet.
Additionally, all our guests would most likely not be going on Overlook, especially our restaurant guests. Also another whole part of this is that, we seat 24 people. That's figure 2 people per car. So we're talking about 12 cars extra a day, in over a 6-hour period.
And they wouldn't all be there at the same time.
Yeah, correct.
But you try to, when you do a seating, are you trying to bring everybody in basically at the same time and you're going to leave about the same time?
More or less.
So therefore, between 7:30, 7:45 to the 10 o'clock hour, you're going to have 24 people in there.
In the restaurant itself.
Ideally.
Yes, sir.
Ideally,
yes, sir.
If it's perfect.
Fingers crossed. Yes, sir.
So assuming they come 2 at a time, you're talking about 12 cars for that.
Correct.
And you're at 10 o'clock at night. So therefore your B&B people are going to be theoretically parked somewhere around where they're sleeping that night.
Correct.
That's going to be 4 more. So now you're up to 16 slots, and then you're going to have some staff, self or
we walk to work, but yes.
Well, a cook or somebody.
Yes, sir.
So you seriously are counting 16 to 20 cars are going to be around that if your restaurant's full.
I mean, if the restaurant's full, you figure we have 2 tables of 4, and they've come in 1 or 2 cars each, right? You have a table of 3 that comes in 1 car. So it's like there's no exact science to how they arrive.
Exactly.
So
I understand.
Yeah.
All right.
But as far as parking, like I said, as far as parking on Overlook, I don't think anybody's going to be parking on Overlook. And if we noticed that, I'm sure we would ask them to move their car.
I do want to comment one other thing that we, at our last meeting, changed the zoning on the house 2 doors down on the other side of Grasty from professional to residential. And of course, there had been a lot of cars parked on that street during the daylight hours when it was a business, and now they've gone away because it's a residence. But that's where you're mainly counting on a majority of your parking.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any further questions for Mr. Bowden before I open up the public hearing? Ready? All right. I will now open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium. We will alternate between individuals physically present and those that have their hands raised versus the Zoom platform. The public hearing is open. Does anyone like to speak on the 1106 North Augusta?
Mayor Claffey, could I interject real quick?
Please
before your
do.
first comment?
Please do.
Councilor Woods, you asked about the parking. That is what the parking requirement has a couple of different options. One takes into account how many employees the business serves and how much floor space there is. Another option is to just do 1 per 3 seats. So that's what I was providing. That's what the parking is based on. That doesn't say that there needs to be parking, obviously, for the staff also, but the parking equation doesn't include that we were utilizing. And Mayor Claffey, 2 doors down a month ago, the property was zoned from business to professional, not to residential. So just slight difference.
No.
He is going to utilize it as his residence.
We were allowing him to.
In the professional district, you can have a residence.
You can't sleep on the ground floor, wasn't it?
In the business district, yes, sir.
But in a professional, you
I
may.
remember that's what we had done because it was a residence, correct? Yeah, all right. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, it's a different.
All right, the public hearing is open.
Hi, I'm Eric Stamer. Been in town since '95. I'm a real estate investor and a caterer. I've known Ian since he pretty much moved to town, both professionally as well as socially, and he's a great guy. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm also his landlord at the shack, and he takes great care of the property. There's never trash anywhere. If there's things that seem suspicious from, say, people across the street or people who shouldn't be on the property, he brings it to my attention. And I very much look forward to eating in his new restaurant. And also one other thing, when you were talking about the parking spots needed for the guests as well as the diners, the guests will be dining. So you don't want to add in any more there. And thank you.
Mr. Kester, anybody online?
No, sir. No one with their hands raised.
Anyone else wish to speak at the public hearing? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Thomas McPherson. Lived here for 70 years, and most of those years on this hill. I was going to spend some time telling you, I'm sure you'd be enthralled about the history of this. When my great grandmother bought all this property in the 1890s from along Augusta all the way up Virginia and across Williams, but since I'm limited in time, I might have come back to that. Y'all can give me a call if you need more.
Thank you.
But let me jump instead to the issue of traffic. Overlook Road is a great shortcut for people who are trying to get to the east if they're on the west, or to the west if they're on the east. And you can avoid Lambert, you could avoid Churchville Avenue by cutting over that hill. And so people do. And it's a curve, and it's a steep hill, and people are in a hurry when they do that. And I've been run off that road several times. I live up on William Street on top of the hill after having lived on the circle there right above this property for most of my life. And it's just a lot of traffic. It's a narrow road, and there's no way you can park on the side of the road. There's just not room. And people tend to be in a hurry, and they tend to be in a hurry in the middle of the road. So I don't know why, but it's just a fast road, and it's dangerous to walk on that shoulder. I don't know how many employees will be there, but I was just wondering about the overlap of the two sessions. You got 12 who are leaving, 12 who are coming in, and then maybe a couple of people with suitcases coming in to get rooms. And how much traffic will there be at that point in that parking lot There is, it's labeled for 6, but that's going to be tough getting 6 vehicles out of there and 6 vehicles coming in with the hill there to the north on Augusta Street. So there's going to be some traffic problems and parking problems there. I think particularly at shift time. There are 2 parking spots, as mentioned, at the rear of this property. If this were a new lot, you'd have to have turnaround. That's required by code, but it's grandfathered in because it's not new. And so these 2 places are going to be backing out into Overlook because or else they'll be backing in, but there's no turnaround there. The parking exhibit that was with the packet, but now apparently has been superseded. But now it shows 2 places over there in the basketball court instead of 1. And that's on the property. It's on the corner of Grasty and Augusta. But I want to bring your attention to Staunton Code Section 18.1, 125.010. And it says, and I'm reading, off-street parking other than residential use shall be either on the same lot or within 400 feet of the building it is intended to serve, measured from the nearest point of the building to the nearest point of the off-street parking lot along a public sidewalk and without crossing any major thoroughfares. Now, the only sidewalks going to this property are on Grasty and North Augusta, and they don't go all the way up Grasty. So it's not on Overlook. It's not on the north part, on the west part of Grasty. It's on the east part of Grasty going down to North Augusta, and then you go up. And if you measure it, it's a lot more than 400 feet. So that doesn't meet code requirements for off-street parking. And that's 2 of these spots. That's right there. I don't know if, I guess people didn't measure it or what, but and I measured from the opening of the lot on Grasty Street, not going way back to where the cars are, just to the very opening of that. And that goes to the front of the building, and that's the porch, not the front door. So you can try to get a few feet here, a few feet there, but I tried to go with the minimum, and it's just a great deal over 400 feet. So that would not qualify. The mention was made of the property 3 doors down that had changed the from B1 to P1 recently. And that was approved here in council on July 27. And if you, I'm out.
Just
all right.
Close it down.
All right. Well, just refer you to the minutes of July 27 to see what was said about changing all of this to residential.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Next.
Got the pen, sir, behind there.
My name is Deirdre Armstrong. I live at 95 Chestnut Ridge Road, Staunton, Virginia. I actually live in the county. That's my mailing address. And I sent an email earlier today, but I'd like to read it for the record. Dear Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm writing in support of rezoning 1106 North Augusta Street from P1 Professional District to B1 Local Business District so that Chef Ian Bowden and his wife Leslie can open a 24-seat restaurant there. I have a small farm south of Staunton and have been growing culinary herbs, specialty produce, and edible flowers for Chef Bowden since he opened the Staunton Grocery Restaurant in 2007. He has been a tireless supporter of local farmers and food artisans from the very beginning and remains committed to showcasing our seasonal harvests, whether they are great or small. His newest endeavor, his gourmet shop, Staunton Grocery, offers carefully curated and hard to find foodstuffs from Southern and Mid-Atlantic purveyors. Along the way, Chef Bowden has garnered many accolades, including a James Beard nomination which if you don't know is the Oscars for the food world, and 3 stars from Washington Post food critic Tom Sietsema. Food lovers have taken note, and our local economy benefits from the tourists who dine at the Shack, shop locally, and patronize Staunton's hotels and B&Bs. We are truly fortunate to have a chef of Bowdoin's stature and passion right here in our beloved Staunton. His vision for his newest restaurant and inn will only bring more discerning diners here, while further encouraging his dedicated farmers and purveyors. Please approve this rezoning request so that Staunton can continue to grow as a first-class destination for travelers and a vibrant home for its exuberant residents. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Mr. Kester.
No, sir.
Hi there. My name is Ashley Malcolm. I live in Staunton, or just outside. I'm here today in support of the Bowdoins and their rezoning project on North Augusta. This is a good thing for our city. My husband, Daniel, and I are farmers in Staunton. We've been working professionally with Chef Ian Bowdoin for 11 years as producers for his restaurants. I also served with him on the market board for the Staunton Farmers Market for nearly 3 years. As a chef, he has good taste. He works with great intention and attention to detail. He understands food and goes to great lengths to source local, high-quality ingredients from dozens of producers and build those relationships. He will purchase produce and other ingredients at peak season just to process, freeze, or can so he can serve local food year-round. He goes to great lengths. He doesn't just frequent the market, purchasing from other local farmers and producers, supporting other small businesses with his own small business. He is genuine and has been critical in shaping the food scene in Staunton, putting our city on the map, like Deirdre said, in national publications. His clientele come from, his clientele come from tourism, but also the local community. The Bowdoins are creative, allowing them to adapt to the needs of their customers. They are established here and care about the quality of their products and hospitality, but also care about people. I'm confident that the Bowdoins will carefully ensure their new venture will benefit the neighborhood and beyond, bringing people in the community together over a meal, plus extending the Southern town hospitality of welcoming tourists to our city. Thank you.
Mr. Kester, anybody on the line?
No, sir.
Welcome.
And Jeffrey, and 16 Woodland Drive. And my husband and I, Dave, have lived here in Staunton for 32 years, a long time. And I am a former Mary Baldwin College graduate, so I know this area quite well. We've known Ian as a good friend and a caretaker and a genius since he came in 2007. Sorry to get emotional. But one of the things that constantly astounds us is his attention to detail, his attention to excellence, but his attention to his customers and his community. And he is vibrant, he is talented, and he always, always looks to the future. And so when he shared with us his plans, we were kind of astounded, but then not astounded, because that's what he does. He thinks about Staunton and he thinks about what's going to help the community. And he always has an eye for getting better and doing better things. So we're here to support him, and we want you to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Mr. Mayor and City Councilors, thank you for letting me come up. My name is Pat Stewart, and I'm speaking on behalf of me and my wife, Sylvia Stewart. And we live at 121 Overlook Drive, Unit B, Stanton, right almost smack dab beside this. The Paranos live right beside it. We're in the middle. I'd like for you to do something for me. Imagine tomorrow morning, you read in the Staunton paper, tomorrow morning, they're going to put a restaurant with places for 4 people to spend the night and bar right beside your house. Think about that. That would happen. And that's what happened to us. Saw it in July, couldn't believe it. So I really want you all to look at this with some empathy, not just that this would be good for the Bowdens, and also think about the people that are right there beside it. There's 3 condos and 8 townhomes. There's 11 of us there. So it's going to affect us. And one of the things that I know that the Planning Commission and the city said, hey, this sounds like a good idea. But I just want to tell you something. I was on this Planning Commission from 2000 to 2016. And this is not a good idea. I also am worried about, and it was brought up about our market value. I mean, I know there aren't a whole lot of houses for sale in Staunton, but that doesn't mean one right sitting beside it. Somebody's going to clamor for it, move into it as a condo because they're going to have a restaurant and hotel beside it. So that is an issue. And the thing about that, think about this also. I've been in Staunton 74 years. And we've gotten to a point we've moved and moved and moved. Now we live here, everything's paid for, we love it there. But you know, now they're going to put a restaurant beside you. How, you know, may not want to stay there. If you had to go get a loan now with high interest rates, that would be a killer. One thing I wanted to show you all, and I think you got it, but this was the trash. Did y'all get a picture of the trash? Okay, that was Sunday morning after 3 days, okay? On Overlook, they pick up the trash on Tuesdays. So add to this trash what's going to be at the hotel. And it's going to be a whole lot more trash going to be sitting out there, whether it's in the front or whether it's in the back for 2 whole days. Let me look at my notes here, almost through. I guess maybe I am through. What I would want you to do would be vote against this zoning. Take a look at it for the other people that are involved in it also. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica?
No, sir.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Hal Perino. I live with my wife on Overlook, off of Overlook at 121 Unit A. The pictures that you all have are taken from my unit looking into this property to be rezoned. Look how close it is, less than 13 feet. Look at the roof line on the cottage compared to the condo. It floods. We've been there 6 years, and when it floods down Overlook Road, it flows down between us and down to the garage. And the garage is flooded several times because I know this from the previous owners. We've had also the issue with screening. Boxwoods take a lifetime. They're not going to be high as that brown fence that you see in the pictures. That brown fence is a little over 5 feet tall. It would take years, 10 years, 12 years. It needs to be a privacy fence put up there, at least 8 feet tall. Because if you look at these pictures here, even on our patio downstairs, we are still looking into that backyard between the cottage and the main house. So, and of course, the deck is out of the question because that's elevated 10 feet even higher. So it's kind of like we're flying over that section. But anyway, I think we've covered most of the issues. So I think it's not a good idea if they want to put a room in the garage, because it does flood down there. And see, there's only one storm drain. There's none on Overlook. The first one is halfway down, not Grassy, but what am I trying to think of? The street that's down Bagby, halfway down Bagby. Now there are some culverts, but they're clogged up. They're clogged up all the time with debris that comes down Overlook Road. And so it overflows those. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Dale Carlson. I'm also a resident of the Breezy Hill Townhome community that's directly next to this property where the rezoning has been proposed. My wife and I are recent residents to Staunton. We moved here just a little over a year ago. And we love living in Staunton. We love the valley. We love living close to downtown. And we love living in a quiet residential neighborhood. Now, in the short time we've been here, however, we've realized that this planning isn't always go like it's planned. And it sounds tonight very clinical, how things are going to be, the parking, et cetera, et cetera. But let me give you a couple of, what I'm saying that for is, this proposal sounds like more of the same because we've had some problems within Breezy Hill Townhomes due to the planning and what was approved. And let me give you two brief examples as a case in point. The first case is that of our 11 townhomes, we have one city water meter. That was approved by the city sometime in the past. So that means that we have sub water meters that are installed in front of our unit by the developer, but we have to go out and read those ourselves. And so the city treated us like an apartment complex instead of a townhome community of $400,000 and $500,000 townhomes. My wife and I have lived in 2 other townhome communities in other cities. We've never experienced anything like this. It is an example of bad decisions. In the second case, the developers were allowed to get away with improper grading and drainage behind the new units that we live in now. We're going to have to deal with this in the future. And the reason that happened is because the bond money that the developers originally put down was returned to them because construction was delayed for several years of our units. Okay, and then as a result, the city had no leverage to make them do it correctly. So we're going to have to do it. We're going to have to fix this. It's probably going to cost us thousands of dollars. I spoke with 2 of the city employees about both of these situations, people who this is their area of responsibility. And they said, well, we weren't here then. This wasn't done on our watch. And if we had this situation before us today, we would not have approved it. I concur with what our previous speaker said about speaking out against this proposal. Since you were elected to the city council, I assume that you were elected to represent all the citizens of the community and not just business owners and developers. This is now happening on your watch. My request to you is not to repeat the sins of the past for our Breezy Hill townhomes. Please redirect or require modifications of this proposal so that the considerations voiced here tonight are addressed in a fair and equitable manner for our community. I know for a fact, for example, that the parking on Grassy, you can't put 2 cars on either side of it. You have a 1-lane road then. So there's things that just aren't going to work. It's just, it sounds good in practice, in planning, but it doesn't work in practice. Thank you very much for your attention and consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Jeffrey. I'm at Woodland Drive, and I'm here to talk a little bit about fine dining and what that means. I've been a customer of Ian's since he opened Staunton Grocery back in the day, and a faithful customer of the Shack, much to my banker's distaste. The notion that fine dining includes rowdy bars is not true to the fact of the Shack. The Shack does not have a bar. The rowdiest that anybody has ever gotten in the Shack is probably me when I start clapping because the food's so good. The previous speakers talked about the fact that Ian has gotten a 3-star review from Tom Sietsma in the Washington Post. I want to tell you how rare that is. Sietsma's last review, when he was still assigning stars, gave 4 stars to 6 restaurants. One of them in Virginia, the Inn at Little Washington, where it cost you $1,000 for one person. There were about 26 people who got restaurants in Maryland, DC, and Virginia that got 3 stars, and the Shack was one of them. That's incredibly rare, and we're lucky to have a place like the Shack, and anything you could do to make that continue and grow is appreciated. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Anyone else wish to speak?
My name is Robin Miller. I'm a developer in Staunton. I live at 216 Institute. I bought that house about 18 years ago. I'm the developer of the Blackburn Inn and the Villages. And I would love to have Ian's restaurant right next to my condo or my hotel. I just want to echo what the other folks have said about having this kind of quality in Staunton is amazing. He's going to bring more economic development here. People will come to Staunton for the fine dining, and doubling from the 1 restaurant to the 2 will bring in more tax dollars for the city. I'm also a licensed real estate broker and have been licensed since 1976. And my professional opinion is that the value of the condominiums on Breezy Hill and in that area will go up in value because they can now walk to this fine dining restaurant. So, and the issue of the parking, that's a separate issue. The city ought to resolve the parking on both sides with signs. There's other ways to do that that can solve the problem for the residents next door. So I am strongly in favor of this and urge you to vote yes for this change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening to the mayor and all the other council members. My name is Carla Perrineau. I live right next door to this proposed rezoning. First, I'm sorry that you have to be distracted by my eye patch, but I had surgery on it this morning. My doctor said you have to keep it on, so here we are. I don't know where to start with only having 5 minutes. You should know that women cannot speak in just all 5 minutes, but nevertheless, the parking that is on proposed, well, first of all, let me just say that if it's my understanding correctly, they are still proposing parking behind the detached cottage. Is that clear? Because if it is proposed parking behind the detached cottage where they propose to put 2 units, it will greatly affect us. If you saw the photos that I did submit, number 2, 3, and 4 pages, we are so close. And I just can't imagine. That is like our backyard because we are up so much higher than the proposed property. And yes, I don't deny the Bowdens at all to provide a fine dining area. That's their dream, but you can vote for their dream and then you're crushing our dream. And we will be sharing. Yes, you can say they will, there's too many variables in this because you can say that the music will be down low or it can only be at a conversation level. Well, first, I think only alcohol makes us naturally usually speak a little louder, but that's not proven, I guess. If we're sitting on our back deck, we will certainly be able to see everyone, and these aren't familiar faces. I know we say we're doing this for our community of Staunton, but a lot of these people will be coming from other areas of the country. I know there's an Airbnb just down on the other corner from us, and I see cars parked there all the time from Vermont and New Hampshire and Northern Virginia and all. So it's not like it's just for our community other than the tax base, I guess. I don't see them as familiar places to me. They're not like familiar faces as a resident and a person that would be living next door. I just would prefer that there not be any activity in the back at all, because what if we want to play music? There's the dual, you know, the dueling of the, I know that we wouldn't keep it. We want to be good neighbors too, but there could be country music and then a little bit of whatever else that's right next door. And I know that noises do rise up. So that would affect us. There's so many other things. I believe that there are too many variables, that this should be at least tabled until it's looked into further, because we can say everyone wants to be a good neighbor, and we hope not to have parking on Overlook, and we hope not to have to use this, and we hope not. But what if it turns out they have to? Then what's our recourse? Do we call you back again? And it's always more difficult to go backwards than forward. I think that we need to think about this more carefully on what we are passing. I just ask that you think about that carefully. And at this time, I'd like to take the opportunity for anybody, for whatever reason, whether you agree with everything or one of your own reasons, how many are here by show of hands that are in opposition to this rezoning as it is stated? Hands up high, I can't see them. All right, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kester,
No, sir, I have no one with their hands raised.
anyone else like to speak? Come, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Jenny Mitchell. I'm here with my husband, Matt. We live in the North End on Woodland Drive, and we own the property directly on the other side of the Bowdens. And we were absolutely thrilled when we heard that they had purchased the house and what their plans were. It was a no-brainer for us to agree to offer. Originally, they asked for one, and so we didn't have any limitations on what we would be in agreement to. It sounds like parking is of a real concern, and if they need more parking, we're happy to offer more parking. Yeah. They asked us for 2 today because it sounded like that's what they need to meet the requirement, but we have plenty of parking back there. So
you would be.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Parking, it doesn't seem like an issue. It seems like they have enough for their requirement, but we're happy to offer more if that's what they need.
Thank you.
Very much.
Mr. Kester,
No, sir.
last call. Does anybody else like to speak on this issue? All right, I call the public hearing to a close.
Mayor Claffey.
Councilor Holmes.
I move the council adopt the ordinance and approve the conditional rezoning as recommended by the planning commission.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion has been made and second. Any further discussion? Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Miss Edwards,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
No.
Motion carries.
All right. Brings us to item F. Public hearing and consideration of a request by Arcadia Building LLC for a special use permit under the provisions of Staunton City Code 18.60.070-3 to allow living and or sleeping quarters on the ground level of a building located at 119 East Beverly Street.
Would you tell him where his pen is?
Ready?
Good.
Thank you, Mayor Claffey. Arcadia Building LLC, otherwise known as Robin Miller, has requested special use permit to have living quarters on the ground floor of a building located at 119 East Beverly Street. The building is 4 stories, 39 feet in width, and approximately 166 feet in length. It basically goes from property line to property line from Beverly Street to the alley in the rear. The property is zone B2, and in the B2 district, I'm sure you're aware, residential use is only allowed on the first floor with a special use permit. Mr. Miller is proposing to restore and redevelop this property with 23 residential units, 7 on each of the upper floors and 2 on the back of the ground floor, which is the subject of tonight's special use permit. He proposes to leave approximately 3,200 square feet of commercial space on the front of the ground floor on the portion closest to Beverly Street. He notes that the building is unique, that's 166 feet deep, which makes it one of the longer buildings in the district. And this depth allows for the residential and for over 3,000 feet of commercial space. I would note that both adjoining property owners sent letters of support that were included in your packet for this application. When this went to Plan Commission, staff recommended against the special use permit because the property is located on the city's main commercial street and in the heart of the downtown business district. And it was staff's opinion that the ground floor of buildings in this area should be reserved for commercial use. The Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this on July 20th. During the public hearing, no one spoke in opposition to the request. And I would note that before the commission made a motion on this, they noted that they had looked at the property in depth, compared it to other properties in the area. One commissioner did a really detailed analysis based on the GIS, and in part noted that there's only one building on Beverly Street that is deeper than this property, and that's the building you're sitting in right now. And this is only a couple feet deeper than that property. Also, that this analysis by this commissioner noted that the average commercial space for a building in Beverly Street is 3,300 square feet. The applicant is proposing to leave almost 3,200 feet in commercial space. So after that discussion, the Plan Commission voted 4-0 with 1 abstention. That's a little mistaken typo in your staff briefing, to recommend approval of the special use permit with the following conditions. No more than 2 residential units may be permitted on the ground floor. Number 2, primary access to the ground floor residential units must be from the alley in the rear of the building, and no direct access to the residential units is permitted from East Beverly Street. And number 3, at least 3,000 square feet of floor area on the East Beverly Street side of the ground floor must be reserved for commercial purposes. I would note that after the Plan Commission meeting, it was brought to my attention that the sheriff's office has some concerns about the redevelopment of this property, some concerns about security at the courthouse, but also the alley behind it. And the alley is already congested at times, and this would just add to that congestion. However, as I noted to him in my discussions this evening, any development of this building would have those issues, I believe, and that the 2 residential units on the back of the property would probably be preferable as far as traffic generators than any commercial use. I could imagine a restaurant going in this building with a kitchen in the back, and just think of all the deliveries coming and going from that. So as far as impacts on that alleyway, I think the 2 residential units would have less impact than what could be done by right. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have at this time or after you conduct a public hearing. Obviously, Mr. Miller is here also to address the council.
Just this thing the sheriff said, what about, are there any issues if we talk to any of the judges? Do they have an issue with any development back there?
The judges have not contacted the city directly. I believe
Yeah,
the sheriff is still here, and maybe you want to ask that question after you open the public hearing.
Okay.
Questions from counselors?
So all entrance to the apartments or the living space will be on the back of the building.
That would be the primary access. I understand that the units on the upper floors would have an access from Beverly Street, and the people could get to their rear units through that if they wanted to, but will be a little bit of an ordeal to get back to them.
So you're looking at only really 2 spaces in the back, have an entrance on the back alley.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And this is in the exempt downtown parking area, so no off-street parking is required or provided in that alley, I believe.
Any further questions from counselors?
No.
Robin, would you like to speak?
Yes, as I said, my name is Robin Miller, and I'm the primary developer for this proposed property at the, which we're calling the Arcadia Apartments. This building has been vacant for at least 40 years. Some of you may know exactly when, but it was certainly vacant when I got here 20 years ago. I did find one lady who said she remembered bowling there when she was in high school, and I kind of worked backwards, and I'm thinking maybe more than 50 years, but it's been sitting vacant. If any of you have been inside of it, there's been 2 fires in it, and the second, third, and fourth floor really are not there. The steel metal floor joists are still there, but all the wood was burned out. So that's why it's sat vacant for 40 or 50 years. It's very difficult to redevelop. This layout here shows the 2 apartments in the rear and the 3,176 commercial spaces. Just to clarify the point about the primary entrance to those 2 apartments will be from the alley, but my guess is that 90% of the time they will enter off of Beverly Street, walk to the elevator, which will be right in front. We're redoing the elevator where it used to be. They'll go up to the 2nd floor, get out of the elevator, walk to the end of the hall, and then down to their apartments. I see very little people coming in from the alley on a regular basis. If they're walking downtown to eat or to shop, they'll come back in Beverly Street. But they could come in back there, and that is technically the primary entrance. There'll be 7 apartments per floor. As you can see, most of them are 1-bedroom. Well, I don't have the other plans. Most of them are 1-bedroom, but there's a 2-bedroom on each floor. These will be market rate apartments, desperately needed. The building that we did, the Beverly Street Apartments, Beverly Hotel Apartments, that building sat vacant for years and years. And now it leased up very quickly. It's 100% full. We have a waiting list. There's a huge demand for more quality market rate apartments in downtown Staunton. And we're anxious to get going on this. So I certainly hope that you will approve the special use permit. The commercial space, it's so deep that back end of it, nobody's going to walk 166 feet back to look at retail items. So I think this is a good solution. We certainly want retail or commercial on Beverly Street. We'll keep the storefront. This is a historic tax credit project, so it'll look exactly like it does now, except it'll be repaired and improved, and the appearance will be much better, and it will conform with all the requirements of the Department of Interior for historic tax credits. And also we went through the Staunton Historic Preservation Commission and was approved. The plan was approved there. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from council?
I was just curious, what would these apartments, like a one bedroom rent for or go for? And then are they condominiums? How do you plan on doing that?
These are rental apartments. They are not condominiums. We have not set the rent yet, but they will probably range from, and don't hold me to this, but in the range of $900 to $1,200.
Robin, so you're going to actually build back all that second, third, fourth floor, whatever?
Oh, yes, yes. Mhm. We have our plans have been submitted to the Department of Historic Resources. They are currently reviewing them. Once they approve them, then we'll apply for a building permit, but we don't want to do that until we know that the Department of Historic Resources approves our concept, which we think they will.
And tell me again, you said how many apartments per floor?
7.
7 apartments per floor. Okay.
I can attest to what his improvements at the Beverly Hotel did to my area, because I'm telling you, it was sliding into the creek, and then the work was very well done, and like he said, it leased out pretty fast, and there's a demand for downtown living. I mean, there really is.
Yeah.
Well, and having the elevator, it will allow folks that don't want to have a 2-story or 3-story walk up. They can come right in and take the elevator up to their apartment. So we think it will appeal to a wide range of ages. It will be mainly singles or couples. We don't have them large apartments. We wanted to get more apartments in to meet the demand. They'll be very nice.
Very good. Any further questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
All right, I'll now open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium, and we will alternate between individuals physically present and those with their hands raised on Zoom. The public hearing is open. Did anyone like to speak on the Arcadia sleeping quarter arrangement? All of a sudden, everybody went quiet. Mr. Kester, anyone?
No, no one with their hands raised.
Public hearing is closed. I'll now entertain a motion.
Mayor
Mayor
Claffey?
Claffey.
Oh, go ahead.
I move that council adopt the resolution and approve the special use permit with conditions as recommended by the planning commission.
And I second that.
Motion has been made and seconded. Mr. Kester.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you and good luck with the project, Mr. Miller. I'm excited. It's very exciting.
Always look forward to another
Yeah.
project from
Robin
Mr.
Miller.
Miller. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us to a public hearing in consideration of a request by Staunton, Virginia, Waynesboro Habitat for Humanity Incorporated to vacate, discontinue, or abandon a portion of the undeveloped Park Avenue, a 20-foot wide alley, and a portion of an undeveloped 4th Street. Ms. Beauregard.
Rose is back.
Boy, this has been the
Mayor
Rodney
Claffey.
Rhodes
Rhodes
night.
night. Road show.
It's a pleasure to be back.
Oh, it's good to have you.
Mr. Kessler, could you bring the screen down and bring up the exhibit I have for this? We skipped over the exhibit for the last item, but. All right.
Hit the down.
Or the down arrow. Let me try the down arrow. You sure? I'm not getting anything. Oh, I'm sorry. We're there. As council is aware, Habitat for Humanity is in the process of developing this property for 22 single-family attached dwelling units at the end of A Street. Of course, before they can do that, they have to build the infrastructure, including the utilities and roads and whatnot. And they are seeking some vacations tonight in order to help accomplish that. Park Avenue, which is, I don't know, is that a fuchsia type color on this map?
Yes.
Thank you. That is a undeveloped street, and in their construction plans, they will have part of their stormwater in that area. So they would like to vacate that. And staff is suggesting that it be vacated all the way to the end since it serves no purpose. And I would note that no portion of Park Avenue has ever been constructed, and it's very unlikely that any portion would ever be constructed. And it does not serve as primary access to any lots. And the 20-foot alley is, I guess, green. And that borders the area that City Council conveyed to Habitat to provide a turnaround. So that is also needed for that turnaround. And the alley does not serve any other purpose once these other streets are vacated. 4th Street, which is that light blue, would need to be eliminated for the replatting of the property in order to create these single-family attached dwellings. There is a public sewer line located in this undeveloped street, and the city has retained an easement for this sewer line for the maintenance of that. And that's why this was not on was pulled from last month's agenda, because we didn't have that easement in place, but we have that secured. That little sliver, and I don't know what color that is, a rust color, is a 15-foot stretch of A Street. That is not being acted on tonight. That will come before you when this development is created, because there will need to be a shift in A Street. Right now, it's the road does not align with this right-of-way. So either you'd have to have a shift in the road, or you need to have a shift in the right-of-way. So we're proposing that it be a shift in the right-of-way. So there will be a 15-foot addition to the city's right-of-way on the opposite side of the street when we come to the final plat. But like I said, that is not up for consideration tonight. That will come up much later when you approve the final plat. Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on this on June 15th, 2023. During the public hearing, 3 people spoke in opposition to the request. However, their opposition was not about vacating alleys and undeveloped streets. It was about the concern about 24 units at the end of their street and what that impact may have on them. It wasn't directly about the vacating of these. And I would note that this is a by right development for these single family attached. So it would not be any kind of public hearing approval or require approval from City Council on that. After the public hearing, the Planning Commission voted 5-0 to recommend approval of these vacations. I'd be glad to take any questions you have at this time.
I will comment that I went out there and drove it with Chris Tuttle. And I was concerned about its proximity to the golf course. And we have reanalyzed it, and this map is different from the one that was brought in our packet several months ago that had some different red lines. Yeah. And this is not going to be affected by the golf course. And I am very comfortable that there won't be any children being hit by errant golf balls. Even though I have been known to be close, I can't get one there. So this is safe, and this is safe. And this is Chris and I went out there, and there's absolutely no problem with this site.
If there's no questions for staff, I would note that Lance Barton is in attendance. If he would like to provide any comments.
I'm Lance Barton, the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity. I'd actually like to yield the floor to any public discussion that may be needed, if that's okay by the City Council.
Well, we will go to the public hearing, but you are allowed a few minutes if you have anything you want to say.
Yeah, the only official statement I have from Habitat for Humanity is please, 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 please.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I will now open the public hearing. If you wish to speak, please approach the podium and we will alternate between individuals present and those that have their hand raised via Zoom. And this is for the Habitat for Humanity property. Oof. Public hearing is open. Anybody like to speak?
I'm still Brenda Mead and I still live on Sherwood Avenue. It probably goes without saying that I'm very much in support of City Council changing this, doing what is asked to vacate this property so that this housing project can go forward. Tonight, we've seen the addition of let's see, 7 times 3, 21 new rental units downtown. What this will add is 22 new residences for folks who are in a category of income, family income, that would make it difficult for them to acquire homes. And owning a home was important to the way my family built wealth. I'm sure for each of you, owning a home was an important step that your families took to home ownership and to building wealth. So I think I don't need to say anything else behind that.
Mr. Kester, anybody online?
No, sir.
Yes, sir.
May I say one more thing? In all seriousness, Habitat respects every neighborhood that they work in. As soon as we get permission and parameters for what we're going to do, one of the things I'm looking forward to is a lot of front yard meetings with the folks in that neighborhood. We have heard almost no negative feedback, but that isn't an indicator of what our responsibility is to communicate with that neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No comment. All righty. I will now close the public hearing. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move the council adopt the ordinances and approve the vacations as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Motion has been made. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Councilor Robertson, second. Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Mayor, just for the record, I'd like to state there are 3 separate ordinances and vacations. That just needs to be stated for the record.
3 separate vacations.
Mr. Holmes.
I understand.
Aye.
Mr. Robertson.
Aye.
Mr. Arrowood.
Aye.
Miss Edwards.
Aye.
Miss Woods.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby.
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Brings us to item H, a presentation on Uniontown Neighborhood Action Plan. Ms. Beauregard. Oh, let me guess.
You can take a guess.
It's the Rodney Road Show.
Well, kind of.
Not really.
Not really.
I'm turning this over
Not this
real
time.
quick.
Very good.
About last year, maybe earlier this year, City Council appropriated ARPA funds for the city to engage the services of a consultant to assist in the creation of a neighborhood plan for the area known as Uniontown. And I will say it has actually been a pleasure working with EPR PC out of Charlottesville and the steering committee. The steering committee, which was formed, consisted primarily of longtime residents, property owners, and other stakeholders of the Uniontown area. And tonight, Will Cockrell, who headed up this project with EPR, is going to give a presentation on the final draft plan. Okay, Will?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good evening.
Evening.
Thank you for having us here this evening. It's a pleasure to work with the Uniontown community. I do want to thank the city for the opportunity to work with this group. They have been great. So many times in these processes, you'll see participation drop off as you go along. It went the complete opposite direction. We started off with the steering committee with about 4 members. It was Cynthia Easterling, Opie Kyer, Kenneth Venable, I believe Barbara Lee was in that group. And they really went out in the community and brought more neighbors and property owners and partners to the table. And I believe that the last couple calls we had at least 30 people who had joined in person and virtually, and we had those 6 meetings. So really great enthusiasm. I want to recognize my colleague, James Watson, who is part of the consulting team too and worked with us. So with this overview, I'm going to provide just a brief background into Uniontown's history. I'll talk through the neighborhood planning process, which really kicked off in March, and then go kind of section by section through the neighborhood action plan, as well as we have 18 recommendations. Those recommendation items really came from the community. Every one we sourced to the steering committee through a Building Bridges event on April 29th. And we had a community survey that had a really great turnaround, great response rate. First off though, Uniontown, when we were working with the community, talking to potential stakeholders, a lot of folks didn't really know where Uniontown was. It's kind of hidden away there on 250 behind the commercial strip. And working with the community and just learning more about its history that really goes back 150 years to the time after Civil War, when the African-American community really gravitated towards the Union Cemetery here, which is right off of Richmond Avenue. During its heyday, the Uniontown community had over 60 residential homes there. It was a prosperous community with I believe 2 neighborhood shops, other businesses, and it was really a true sustainable community. The city annexed a major part of Uniontown in 1948, and there was another annexation in 1986. The comprehensive rezoning in the 1960s changed the land use here to industrial. So it was really industrial and commercial land uses that prohibited new residential development and restricted any new renovations on existing residential lots. So since that time, that residential reconstruction, that residential development here has been restricted. And also the Uniontown area still lacks centralized water and sewer, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. In terms of the process, I'd mentioned that we had kicked off March of this year. We did start off by looking at previous plans and efforts, including the 2021 Uniontown Water and Sewer Extension Study. There was a community tour in 2015, which was the Uniontown Cultural Landscape Report. We did pull photos and comments and notes from that event in 2015. We also referred heavily to the 2005 publication of Julius Gaines, Dr. Julius Gaines's publication on Uniontown, drew heavily from that and hope that this effort honored his work. I mentioned the community survey. We had 86 responses to that survey, which we were really surprised by how much we received here. We did take in every response. At the same time, I do want to note that we divided out some of the responses of if you live or own property in Uniontown. We also analyzed those separately just to make sure that we were looking at that feedback kind of from these different lenses. I do want to also thank the Building Bridges group. We had 2 members on the steering committee. They organized an event on April 29th, and it had really great participation here and told stories from Uniontown's past to make sure that we bring that into its future. As I mentioned, the steering committee, we had residents in this group, property owners, other interested stakeholders and possible partners. I know that Habitat attended one of our meetings and talked us through what residential redevelopment would look like. We also had staff that attended these meetings, including the city assessor and the public works department, which really did a fantastic job of doing research on the bridge and other infrastructure items that we brought into our discussion. The steering committee was really, played the central role of defining goals for the neighborhood, overseeing development of the draft document itself. They really were the source of most all of these recommendations, the 18 that came out of this report, and really helped us identify additional stakeholders and members who can participate in this process. And again, it was a real pleasure to work with them. We met on Wednesday nights, and a lot of folks had other plans in their evenings, but happily put those plans aside and wanted to be there. And when we announced our last meeting, a lot of members were asking if maybe we could meet again to keep this going. So we were really encouraged by the momentum and energy that they brought to those meetings. So I'll go ahead and jump into the action plan itself. The document, which I believe was in your packet, includes 9 sections. That includes an introduction, background into the neighborhood's history and past, some general conditions, land use, existing structures. We looked at infrastructure. We did a SWOT analysis, as well as a community vision and goals. And then finally, we had our recommendations, and we'll review those in just a moment. So first off, on the introduction section, I will say that a lot of thought and discussion went into defining the Uniontown boundaries. We're not saying that these lines here necessarily represent the historic of what one might consider Uniontown, but for the sake of this study, these are the boundaries that we set, looking at the industrial properties adjacent to this, as well as some of the major roadways. We also included into here an overview of the process, which includes a summary of the survey, the Building Bridges event, and the 6 steering committee meetings that we had throughout the process. I do want to also thank the Building Bridges group for a timeline that they had established during that event. We documented that, included it in the plan. They did a great job of really pulling together a comprehensive history of Uniontown. The old National Avenue Bridge was certainly a central item for discussion throughout the process. Again, I want to thank Public Works staff for coming in and really detailing out the history of that bridge, the condition reports, and why that was relocated to its new spot on Frontier Drive. In terms of general conditions, we try to do a thorough, a holistic view of the neighborhood, looking at topography. Certainly the railroad is an enormously influential feature here that really affects what can and cannot be done. There are actually 3 cemeteries in the neighborhood, including a neighborhood cemetery that is a final resting place for generations of Uniontown residents, which is just out of the study area to the north. We also included historic resources from the 2015 cultural landscape. Part 4, in terms of land use, we started out big and started to zoom in, including its location on the 250 corridor. It really is the midpoint between I-81 and downtown. As I mentioned, it's for many traveling along the corridor, Uniontown is hidden away behind that commercial strip. And through this process, we wanted to flip the script on that and think about, can Uniontown actually play really reset the tone on this corridor, not be hidden away, but actually create a real community here that can set a new vision for the corridor. That'd be a great example moving forward. We looked at zoning and land uses, and we also included proposed rezoning in the neighborhood. The community really wanted to have this be more of a residential community again, something that represented its past. And again, going back to that high point with over 60 single family homes here back earlier in the past century. And so this map here is really a representation of the community and what they saw was appropriate for that vision. We did also look at what is the development potential here. We looked at existing infrastructure, land assessments. We looked at percent slope as that affects what you can build on property, and as well as the layout of each one of those parcels. We had originally said that the recommendation is to rezone these properties from industrial to residential R2. However, we found that several of the parcels are actually under the minimum requirement for R2, as well as the lot widths were just under that requirement as well. We wanted to make sure that any changes to zoning would ensure that these properties are legally conforming. We didn't want to create some non-conformity issues. So the recommendation now is to create a new zoning district that will help meet the needs of the Uniontown community and its redevelopment. I will note also that we created a 3D rendering of the community and showed various alternatives or some conceptual ideas of how it could be redeveloped. Did want to make sure that we hit this point home though, is we're focusing on uncertain areas, but the plan does include the north and south sides of the neighborhood. So that area north of the railroad is just a part of this plan as the southern part. And so the recommendations apply to all parts of this study area. Existing infrastructure, we looked at transportation, street widths, what is allowable, some different concepts there, as well as the water and sewer issue. That was, again, a high priority issue for the community throughout the process. When they did remove the National Avenue Bridge that also severed a critical water line connection in the community, when you have water sitting in the pipe, you don't have that proper flow, it can create issues with smell with the water, and we did hear that from several residents in the area. With the SWOT analysis, we created an inventory of community strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We try to focus in on how can the community really take advantage of its strengths, how can it help to overcome some of its weaknesses, how can it take advantage of opportunities and mitigate against certain threats in the community? And that was part of what fed into our 18 recommendations. Vision statement, I'll say that this was actually quite clear throughout the whole process. The community seemed to have a very clear vision, and there was truly consensus about that. I was actually quite surprised by how much consensus there was with the folks that we engaged with throughout the process and the steering committee. The vision statement written here of to create a thriving and resilient Uniontown that embodies its historic sense of community, provides families with a healthy place to call home, and honors its proud past. There might have been disagreements about small items here and there, but that one was really clear. That is what we heard. In terms of goals, I won't read through all of them here, but I will say that there are 4 main areas that includes reinvestment, sense of community, preservation, and establish reconnections. Those 4 areas really arose during the first meeting and was just consistent all the way through. A lot of the language you see here were quotes taken directly out of the steering committee meetings. We did a lot of introductions and went through a round of those for a lot of those meetings, and we just kept collecting quotes and putting those in and eventually kind of massaged them into these main goal areas. And I will say some of the lifelong residents, some really caring comments here of how much they really care about the community and their vision here of just wanting to see it back as a residential place, a community where they can come back. And we had a lot of former residents and property owners who had moved away and who did want me to express that they have plans to come back as soon as they're legally allowed to with the new zoning, with residential zoning. In terms of the recommendations, again, we listed 18. We wanted to make sure that this plan provided a clear step-by-step guidance on these actions. The specific recommendations are not listed in any specific order. There is numbering here, but that is not intended to show order of action. We did include language here under the additional comments, as well as the project description that gives additional commentary on which actions would happen first. So as an example, the road improvements would happen after the water and sewer improvements. Otherwise, you'd have to go back and re-excavate the improvements that you just installed. We also wanted to be sure that these action tables detailed potential funding sources, steps, sequencing, who's responsible, some costing ideas, at least general ranges of what those costs might be. We also wanted to create an inventory of all the community feedback in these actions here. So as decision makers, when you see the recommendation, you can glance through it and easily determine where did this idea came from, what is it, what did the community think about it, and what's some additional background and commentary on it. So we really wanted to focus on a user-friendly document. So next up is the recommendations, and this is really where you might say the rubber meets the road here of what the community truly envisioned here. Again, these are not listed in any particular order here. The first goal, though, is reinvestment. First action is extend water and sewer infrastructure into Uniontown. I said that these are not listed in order with the numbers. However, it just so happens that this was a top recommendation. This is what the community really wanted to make that clear, that that was a high priority. We have in here improve the internal roadway network, and we documented that network during our field visits, as well as an education program for Uniontown's owners to make sure that they understand their rights and what they can do with their property. This is a very old neighborhood, again, going back 150 years, so the property lines are a little hard to track. And as we're looking at right-of-ways and potential recommendations, notice that a lot of the lot line references included things like where the old stone used to be, essentially. So we did include in here an action that really intends on solidifying those property lines. As I mentioned on the sense of community, the community was very clear on what their vision was throughout, and they were consistent with that. That first recommendations, again, just so happen to be high priority, is to update the zoning map to reflect that residential vision. Also to partner with housing groups to construct new quality affordable homes. To evaluate the condition of remaining vacant structures. We did that process and did document that just to help with home rehabilitation. To organize community cleanup events. One aspect that is critical for this is we do recognize as the team and the committee we're working on these recommendations that some of these actions are long-term actions. Certainly recognize that. However, we believe that there do need to be kind of immediate steps, intermediate and long-range steps, where those immediate low-hanging fruit can kind of keep that momentum moving and to keep the community as a whole moving towards that long-term actions. We believe also some low-hanging fruit here can help to rebuild trust in the process and really forge a relationship between Uniontown property owners and residents and the city as you all move forward. We also heard from the Building Bridges event of wanting to preserve some of the natural feel of the community, kind of this idea of you feel like you're in the country or in the rural area, but you are in the city. Under preservation, I'd mentioned there is a community cemetery, the Uniontown Chapel Cemetery, which is actually within what is currently the quarry property, and reestablishing access. There's been debris currently on that access there that makes it difficult to get back there and to maintain those resting places. They wanted to develop a pamphlet as well as other online resources to communicate Uniontown's history, install markers, to commemorate that history in the community. So as it grows and moves forward, we want to recognize, make sure we recognize that past. And we had a really hard time finding the old Uniontown glances backwards, and we had talked about having that in the public schools and other places where it's easily to access. And I mentioned the reestablishing connections. The National Avenue Bridge came up. That is a very difficult, nuanced, complicated issue. We wanted to make sure that that was still in there. We certainly aren't trying to prohibit any options here. A road connection would involve potentially acquisition of properties and homes. So we wanted to obviously minimize that. We did include in here a possibility of a bike ped bridge, but again, that would need more study. That's a whole engineering study in and of itself. Also examine gateway treatments. We put an example in here, an image a few slides earlier, as well as update the City of Staunton's comprehensive plan, showing these recommendations and vision from the Uniontown community effort. And then finally, to redesign Uniontown's commercial properties, because currently they don't necessarily engage the community. So are there ways to help make those commercial properties part of the Uniontown community as it grows? So again, I'd say if I could, just as a consultant, you work on a lot of projects, and you occasionally look back and think of some projects as being a little special in some way. And I would put this one under that category, because the community really was, they were great. And city staff was also amazing through this process. So for us, it was a really positive experience. We hope that you that you like the product that came from this process, and happy to take any questions that you have.
Well, we thank you for your efforts very much. And also just my understanding along the way was the same as yours, that it just built in momentum and people taking part in the whole process, because you don't want something that not as many people take part in and everyone's only hearing about it later. So I think it had really good buy-in from the residents and the owners from there as well.
Sir, when you talked about I agree with momentum and having the low hanging fruit, and which of those activities would you describe as that low hanging fruit? Is it the low costs, low investment, quick benefit? And what would that be?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of those recommendations are community driven, and that's certainly something that they can continue. I hope that the group continues to meet, and that was something I advised the group, is having them continue to meet. I think increases potential for success exponentially. I do think, I know that in the 2021 Water and Sewer Extension Report, there were some next steps and some actions, including preliminary engineering. There was a next step there of working with the community to determine their agreement with this plan and potential alternatives. I think we've accomplished that step in the process. So I don't want to speak for the community or staff, but I do think that there are some intermediate steps that the city could take on some of these long range recommendations. And I would say, like with the community cleanup, the actions related to documenting and communicating and celebrating the community's history are certainly some things that can happen very soon.
Right.
And the rezoning.
Right. Exactly.
Sir.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a request to make, or actually a motion, but first I want to ask you a question. Being a consultant, do you have an idea of a ballpark figure that it would take to put Uniontown back in its glory days?
Back in its glory days, a figure on that. That would be a complicated question.
I know what I mean. I know it was a hard question, but I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, I mean, I do think when you're looking at the water and sewer improvements, I mean, those figures are clearly stated in the 2021 report. So that is in the millions, certainly.
5.2.
Right. And then with the improvement of the roads, I think that right there would would be a similar type of ballpark of, you're certainly getting into the millions on that. You would probably want to actually put in a new base for the road, so not just repave it, but actually put a new base in, and that certainly is going to be in the millions there, certainly. I will say there are some intermediate improvements though. So the rezoning by itself, I think that makes a huge difference right there. So when we were going through the process, we were looking at some pretty big ticket items and long-term, and a little discouragement along the way of, this is really expensive and this is long-term, but it's all about these little intermediate steps, these little intermediate improvements, but staying committed on that long-term vision.
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir, Mr. Roberts.
I move to request the Staunton Planning Commission to prepare an amendment to the City of Staunton's comprehensive plan. This proposed amendment shall incorporate the Uniontown Neighborhood Action Plan as an addendum to the City of Staunton's comprehensive plan. The Staunton Planning Commission shall conduct a public hearing on this proposed amendment within the next 90 days pursuant to Virginia Code Section 15.2-2229.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I noticed that action step D3 was to involve the comprehensive plan, and I think this is a first step. And let's get this thing off and rolling and start figuring out our steps and sequences and priorities, and let's get rolling.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Good job on the presentation. Thanks.
Call the roll.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Kesker.
Mr. Arrowood,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Edwards,
Aye.
Mr. Robertson,
Aye.
Mr. Holmes,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Darby,
Aye.
Mayor Claffey.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Good job.
Thank you guys.
All right.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Brings us to an update on juvenile and domestic relations court facility West End project. Ms.
Thank you,
Bonner.
Mayor.
What?
So Rodney Rhodes is not doing this one. Jeff Johnson and I are. He's running out the room. But let me start. I'm just going to do a quick introduction. Then I'm going to turn it over to
Please.
Jeff, who's going to show us a few things, and we'll be brief, I promise. This is the first of many updates you and the public will receive about the new J&DR court facility, which is going to be going out in Chestnut Hills. We'll need to come up with a new name, by the way, at some point. The city closed on the property last Tuesday, August 15th, at which time we became the official owners of that site. And you probably noticed a few days after that, some visible changes were made, such as a chain link construction fence surrounding the property. And that's there for a couple of reasons. One is to keep the area cleared for pre-construction activities, including survey efforts and geotechnical investigation, as well as to protect the public from eventual construction activities. And there's also no trespassing signs. So we're asking folks to please be mindful of that in that area. But I'm happy to say that adjacent property access is completely from public right-of-way will remain, including Stella Mia's restaurant. They have been, I would like to shout out to them. They've been amazing to work with so far. They've been a great partner through all this and already a great neighbor. So thank you to Stella Mia's for being a partner with us so far. So they are open for business. So, and there's plenty of parking so that this will not interfere with their business whatsoever. I just want to say that we're still very excited about this opportunity of the West End and having our J&DR court in that site eventually. We do believe this is going to be a catalyst for revitalization and will help incentivize private sector growth in the West End and create some economic vitality. I also want to thank the West End Business Association for already being a supportive partner and productive advocate and positive advocate, and we look forward to working with them throughout this project. www.stanton.va.us/courthouse is the website. You can go there for more information. We're going to try to figure out a way to put these updates on there in a nice visual way. So we're going to figure that out. So thank you for your patience. And if, of course, you can go to that website and email us with any questions. I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Johnston now, Public Works Director, who's been working very closely on the facility itself and with the stakeholder. So he's got a few slides to show. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. It has been a while since I've been at this podium, and I feel like so many students this time of year standing in front of the class to tell you what I did this summer. It has been very, very busy. We were all very excited when we were able to get that property under contract. We immediately moved out to get a design firm on board. We were lucky enough to have a number of firms submit proposals. After a difficult process, selected the Mosley Group to help us with the design. That contract was awarded on the 27th of July. The kickoff meeting for the design was on the 28th of July. And that sense of urgency was because we owed a submittal to the Commonwealth on the 18th of August. That included some basic schematic drawings and other elements. So there was literally no time to waste. So the first thing I'd like to point out is the amazing cooperation that we've got from the current JNDR staff, the sheriff and his staff, Blue Ridge Court Services, everyone involved, all the stakeholders who immediately showed up for what ended up being a very long and very detailed meeting to go in excruciating detail through the operations of a facility that we have never operated before. We Staunton have never operated our own JNDR court. So it wasn't just as simple as, well, this is how it is now. It was a lot of, well, how will this work differently? How will this be different? All those ideas were given to Mosley. They spent about 2.5 weeks coming up with a number of different ideas, different thoughts. The whole group reconvened on the 17th of August. Again, detailed door by door, hallway by hallway, with how it was going to work, who needed to be near who. I think it was 3.5 hours on Zoom as we all chewed through it. And all those ideas were then put into a 48-page submission that was submitted the next day to the Commonwealth. And I know, it's a bit of a cliche to say that, we were making changes to the last minute. I can tell you that my last email interchange with Mosley was at 4:49 on the 18th, and the actual transmittal to the Commonwealth was at 4:59. So when I say we were working to the last minute, that is exactly what we were doing. Now that document is now with the Commonwealth, and we have started our 45-day consultation period with them. Now, unlike the consultation period we had previously, when we were talking about sort of a generic make-believe building on a non-specific site, now this is an actual building on an actual site that is going to be actually built. So it is a different dynamic with the Commonwealth. They'll be going through with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that all of the guidelines that the Commonwealth established for courthouses are met. To our knowledge, we have not cut any corners. We are not asking for any variances. To our knowledge, we have met every one of those guidelines. But the next 39 days will tell us that for sure. So that document, that 48-page working document, is still very much in flux, but it will in fact set the building that we are going to build. And so while I'm extremely happy that we're able to meet that deadline, and I'm thrilled with the cooperation that the team has put together, I'm also daunted by what is ahead of us. So by the court order, the next hard date is the 22nd of November. And yes, that is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. Not exactly the date that you want to have a major homework assignment due, but that is when the final development design will be due back to the Commonwealth, taking the schematic design that we end up with at the end of this 45-day period and placing every outlet, every pipe, every doorknob, laying in the furniture. It will be the final design. And we're going to have to get there by Thanksgiving. And if that wasn't bad enough, and believe me, it certainly is, the milestone after that is final construction drawings due on the 16th of January, 2024. So between Thanksgiving and mid-January, traditionally known as the most productive time of the year, we are going to have to convert that final design into something that we can put on the street and solicit bids. Because the milestone after that, and the hits just keep coming, is breaking ground, turning dirt by April of 2024. Mid-April 2024. To put that in, I guess, kind of a public worksy perspective, when we start setting the bollards out again next spring, we need to have a building designed, a contract awarded, and work underway. It is a daunting challenge. So we will be back here talking about this a lot, because as much work as we've done in the past month, that pace needs to continue moving forward. Now, I mentioned that the document that we've given to the Commonwealth is very much a working document. It would be counterproductive to share too much of that detail now in public, because so much of it is subject to change. But I do want to share some things of a sort of generic nature to give everyone a sense of what we're talking about. And I'll start with the preliminary sort of site plan. The first thing that the folks in Mosley said at the start of the meeting was, congratulations, whoever got this site. It's a wonderful site. They weren't really sure how they could meet the tight timeline on any other site but this one. So that is sort of the basic layout. And I put it up there mostly to show the ability of that site to accommodate the various traffic flows, secure parking, segregated parking, all the things that the Commonwealth is looking for on that site. So to kind of orient everybody, Beverly Street is over on the left. That little rectangular space inside all the parking spaces, that would be the court facility. And the sort of upper left corner of that building, that's the corner of the existing building in the back of that lot. So that just kind of helps you situate it there. But again, good circulation, drainage already established, utilities already in place. Really allowed for a lot of flexibility. And that site design was shuffled around a bit, more than a bit, as we went through the process. And we were able to do that because of the site. So again, now this is probably way more exciting to me than it is to most folks, I think, who are probably more interested in that. Now, this is not a design rendering. We haven't landed on a design yet. And the outside of the building is obviously a function of the inside of the building. But one of the things the Commonwealth wanted from us was an elevation to give them an idea of the architectural motif that we were going through. And if I've learned nothing in my 40 years in this business, architects have more ideas than they have sheets of paper to draw them on. And there were a lot of them floated out there. But some of the things that stuck out were, because we have this lot that allows us to create a north-facing building, there's an opportunity to use a lot of glass in the front to bring in that natural light. And because it's north facing, it doesn't turn it into an easy bake oven at times of the year with the sun screaming in. So all of them incorporated a lot of glass. Some of them almost floor to ceiling glass. But the consensus of the working group is that's really not a West End look. The sort of the steel and glass was not necessarily a West End look. So this look with the additional brick veneer sort of tied it into the mid-century modern motif that you see throughout the West End. And so it won't look exactly like this, but again, this is sort of the architectural feel that we have proposed to the Commonwealth. Here's a look at it from a slightly different angle. You can sort of get a feel for how that lays out. Gorgeous facility, certainly going to be a wonderful facility for the folks who work there and the folks who have business there, but also it's not just, the goal here is not necessarily to just bring things up in the West End, but to tie this into the West End. And we feel like that is what we're accomplishing here. Now, as we race headlong into more and more detail, there'll be more and more great pictures to show. More and more, we can show floor plans and other things as those things are finalized and go public. But we have come a very, very long way in a very short time. And I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share that with the public. And I wanted all the folks who worked so hard to make it happen to be acknowledged. So with that, if anyone has any questions.
Questions from councilors?
Actually, I'd just like to state something. Stella Maria Pizza is not closed. A lot of people think because the fence is up, they've been getting calls asking if they were closed. And I talked to the lady, Maria, and she's really concerned. And I put it up on my website that they were open. And if anybody would like to put something out there and let everybody know that they have great pizza, they have good calzones. It's a great little Italian type shop to go to. And I really just hate the fact that she's afraid it's going to hurt her business.
I've gotten a lot of comments on the exact same thing. So I think we really have to be careful.
I'm worried about
let's not put out a West End business to do this.
Understood.
When you go into that lot, are you when y'all doing construction, are you planning to go in on the lights where the light is, or are you planning on going in on the other side?
We have the luxury of multiple access to that lot. So when we get to that point, we will be able to come up with a construction plan. And again, we will continue to involve Stella Mia in all those plans, just like we did when we were setting the fence outline to make sure that we're considering their needs along with ours.
And I know that you put the fence all the way down. Was that feasible to block that other exit off and not let people come through there too? I mean,
well, there is an existing easement for Verizon to get to a communications vault that they have on that site. We wanted to keep that open as well, but we certainly wanted to minimize the amount of footprint. So we.
I mean, that's another reason why people look and think it might be closed, because that fence is, when it comes from West Beverly, you're looking at the fence and you're thinking, oh, that's the whole thing. So they're not open. So.
Again, we wanted the fence to enclose as much of the area as possible to keep as much of the area safe as possible as we begin, what is going to be a long design, demolition, construction process.
And on another note, I just want to thank you for finally mowing the grass and moving that white sign from in front.
As anyone who's acquired a new property knows, there's always a bit of discovery learning as you get through there. And yes, we will continue to, take care of the things that we find. But it is the site writ large, and maybe beyond the J&D, our courtroom, is going to be a huge asset to the city moving forward. And we are all very excited about having it.
Further questions? Thank you very much. Further questions? All right, now we're ready for matters from the city manager.
I don't have anything else this evening,
What?
Mayor
You're not gonna-
Classy.
You don't have Rodney to pass it on to.
I think Mr. Robertson's happy that I don't have anything else to say. I think so.
He's got to be at work.
I'll pass for this evening. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Leslie. That brings us to our final thing of the evening, our matters from the public. This part of city council agenda is entitled Matters from the Public. It is a time the council sets aside to hear from citizens and others on a wide variety of subjects. A copy of the rules are available in paper form from the clerk, Mr. Kester, and online. Please familiarize yourself with these rules before commenting. Come to the podium, begin your call, identify yourself, and complete your remarks within 5 minutes. The Matters from the Public is open. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Ophi Kyer, 301 Yunt Avenue, Staunton, Virginia. I want to start with thanking City Council tonight for moving Uniontown forward. 150 some years have passed since that place was devastated. I need to also thank our consultants for a fantastic job in putting this together, as well as our city staff, Rodney and Mr. Hartless. And the gentleman that just left was also in the meeting, but all of those that helped and listened. We have some of Uniontown in the back. Right now, I don't think they've ever been acknowledged. I would like for them to stand if they would. These are the descendants of the people that marched to Uniontown 150 years ago. They stayed. I hope that they're ecstatic about the fact that their neighborhood may come back. I would say that one of the biggest desires is that when we go back through and we're redeveloping this land, that it is something that they will be very proud of, that they can sit and then tell their children and their grandchildren about what their grandfather and their great-grandfather and grandmother did and how they're still there. So a lot has been accomplished in a few months, and we do greatly appreciate that. As you stated, Mayor Claffey, that you've taken the first step to move this forward. The second step is going to be beginning October the 28th, and that Building Bridges at their Monday night meeting has decided we're going to do a neighborhood cleanup. In communication with actually through Councilwoman Woods, the Staunton Rotary is already excited about helping us with that. And as volunteer trucks and everything else, we are going to have to talk with our city manager over there to make sure that we're doing things in proper order. And I've already consulted with my corporate lawyer on what we need as far as waivers to make sure that everybody is protected. I know several years ago, Rita Wilson started a neighborhood cleanup in the Johnson Street neighborhood. And during one of those cleanups, a young child was hit by a car. And I believe things worked out well, but the city was sued. There was a big thing, and then the cleanup stopped. We don't have that big a problem in Uniontown in that you can't go flying through any of those streets, or you might lose your car in the process. But I wanted to let you know that we are continuing forward. We're hoping to sit down with the citizens, the owners of Uniontown, and have private meetings also with them on which direction they would like to go in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. This does feel like a momentous time, and appreciations for that. My name is Catherine Barnes, 216 North Madison Street, Staunton, Virginia. Tonight, we heard members of a community very upset about the potential for a high-end restaurant to be built in their neighborhood. Imagine what it must have been like to be around your dinner table and find that the community that you have been living in, that you feel settled in, where you know everyone, where your children are safe wherever they go and will be held to account, that perhaps your grandparents built, or maybe you yourself built, is suddenly determined to be light industrial, that you could no longer build for your own children's benefit or even repair your home. What would that be like? And what has it been like for the city of Staunton in many ways, for my generation and for my child, who is now a senior in high school's generation, to not even know the history? We found that out a few years ago when we were doing What We Lost with downtown, in the loss of the business district there, that was also done in a decision by City Council around the same time in the early 60s. We don't know, I can't know, what was in the hearts of minds of those city councilors at the time. But what we do know is the consequence, which was the destruction of the wealth of much of the historic African-American community that built the wealth and part of the culture of this city. The city of Staunton essentially stole from these communities. It feels like now there's the opportunity for a tiny bit of repair, It's going to be a lot. We heard tonight, this is not going to be fast. It's going to take a lot of energy. It's going to take a lot of resources. And yet the first step in that is the political will that we're very excited to see, that it seems that this council, that you on your watch seem to be willing to marshal, because without that political will, it will not happen. So this is my commendation to you, is to keep and sustaining that political will. It may take the form of finding staff members who can seek out the grants. I think there's probably more grants available now, especially with the national recognition of the historical injustices that were done at this same time around urban renewal and in the 60s. Seize that opportunity while that money is available. It may mean also things that you all can directly do. For example, if and when it does happen that individual families have the ability to choose whether they are going to be zoned residential, that they will not experience a tax penalty for doing so. That is something, holding those taxes steady is something that you can do. There are many, many things, and I'm sure we will be talking about it much more in the years to come. But I just want to finish by saying a reminder of what Dr. West teaches us, that justice is what love looks like in public. Let us be a community of love, that being our character. Let it be that which guides what we are leaving for all of the children, what all of the children of our community will inherit going forward, and especially the descendants of this generation of the historic Uniontown community. Thank you very much for everything that you're doing with this.
Thank you, Catherine.
Mayor Coffey. We have a caller on Zoom.
Okay, go ahead. Caller, can you hear us? Caller, can you hear us?
I'm here. I had to unmute. Sorry, I was so slow there.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Stuart Gaines, and I just want to reiterate some of the things that already have been said. I grew up on 810 Patton Street with my brother Julius, who wrote the book on Uniontown. And I just remember my father in the 60s, as you already know, he went up to City Hall, he and Mr. Wormsley, who lived down the street, and they wanted to know why they couldn't add on to their property, why it was zoned industrial. And I don't think they ever got a reason they really believed. So if he was here tonight, I think he would be much more, had much more positive feeling about Staunton, Virginia than he did at that time. Also, the historical aspects of Uniontown may lend itself to an historical grant. I'm not so have detailed information on that, but in the past, those things were available. And when I talked about them one time, I was told that City Council didn't do those type of things, that you had a historical society in Staunton, which you do in Augusta County. So maybe the council can reach out and see if they can obtain some money from that source. I understand it's going to be expensive, but I remember, I think all the citizens there paid taxes from 1960 all the way through, and they didn't always get the benefits that the other part of Staunton did. And I appreciate your interest in this situation, and I feel a lot better than I did before about it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Go ahead, Cindy.
Cindy Connors, Skyline Avenue in Staunton. I just want to say two things, that I'm super excited about all the things that happened in this meeting today. I'm really positive and optimistic about everything moving forward. But also, and coupled with that, I have a dream that I'll be able to walk from my house to the pizzeria, Stella Mia's. And maybe I go over, I travel quite a bit, and I see a lot of construction, and people put big giant banners that say business is still open. Maybe the city could do that for Stella Mia, right on that fence, something big and obvious, that they're still open to help them out. Thanks.
Cindy.
Mr. Kester,
No, sir.
anyone else wishing to speak? Welcome.
I'm Barbara Lee, 904 Rockaway Street, Staunton, Virginia. And I want to ask a question. Did you all put that banner up down at the motel welcoming Murray Baldwin? Because I did ask the city of Staunton to do that. And I was wondering if you all had any hand in that. You didn't?
Yes, ma'am.
We did.
You didn't?
We did.
You did?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good night.
No one ever says thank you to me.
Make Jeff cry.
Thank you, Barbara.
All right.
Mr. Kester, anybody else?
No, sir.
Anybody else in the audience? Well, thank you for a long meeting. It is now 10 o'clock and we started at 5 o'clock tonight. So I hope everybody enjoyed their summer because it's over.
So
Thank you and good night.